Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страны.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Ті, хто води всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів. Робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить. Хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар? Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ. Тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 844 of the news. And it's good to see you all once again. And the Russians are getting absolutely pounded up there in Vovchansk. And it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine, and we have absolutely impressive news from every single aspect. We have been able to see that Ukrainian forces have advanced in Vovchansk practically exactly the way we said they would yesterday. We have also been able to hear reports that apparently inside the Russian Federation, taxes are being increased to try and pay for the war, once again showing how destitute financially the Russian Federation really is. Not only that, but we also got additional news in Rostov-on-Don of a major substation being hit and exploding. We were also able to get video footage of that, and it was pretty insane to look at. We also got to hear of a prison riot happening in Rostov-on-Don at the exact same time today, which appears to have ended in somewhat calamity, but although we will be covering that in a great bit of detail according to the information that we have. Not only that, but we also got an interesting bit of frontline footage and news from really the entirety of the front today, all the way up into the area around Kupiansk and all the way down to Kherson. We were also able to get news of the German Skynex system again, and we were also able to see Zelensky make a fairly interesting statement today at a peace summit. We were also able to hear that a Ukrainian-owned vessel within the area of the Strait, actually in the Gulf of Aden, was stricken by a Houthi missile today, which is once again drawing us a little bit back into the Middle East. But we have absolutely loads of news to cover tonight. But before we move into it, we also have a really big thing to cover. Tonight is the Sunday fundraiser night. And Sunday fundraisers are absolutely incredible nights because it is this day, every single day of every single week, that the Least Spring Army shows that they are able to once again support Ukraine with all of their might and make sure that support is able to make its way over there and have an actual impact on the very news that we all listen to every single night. In particular, the fundraiser tonight is for Nova Ukraine, which is an absolutely incredible nonprofit with an unbelievable track record. Since the beginning of the war, they have helped out 5 million Ukrainian citizens, providing medical services and all other kinds of incredible support that has been able to help 5 million Ukrainians either survive the war or relocate from the war zones that currently ravage a large part of Ukraine's eastern regions. This is something that I have to say is an amazing nonprofit, one that has made it onto our register because it is such a transparent and not only that, such a hard-working nonprofit. And of course, tonight's fundraiser goal is $3,000. Hopefully we can reach it. The Least Spring Army has never missed a fundraiser goal, and I'm very certain that tonight will not be that night. And so, of course, if y'all want to make sure to support it, it is attached directly to the stream. And if you want to know how the fundraiser funds are collected and transferred, make sure to go type in on Google, YouTube Giving, and YouTube, well, actually Google will tell you all about it, considering that this system is actually run by Google, considering that Google owns YouTube. But moving on into the major news that we have from inside of Vovchansk, we were able to hear that the Ukrainians have pushed the Russians back. Just like we were saying the other day, and I'll recap that really quickly, since the Ukrainians encircled and captured the 400 Russian soldiers within the aggregate building down here, or the chemical plant more so, there's an aggregate building that we're going to be talking about today that's in a different part of the city. The Russians have been put in a...
Damn!
David Romano!
500 Canadian. Damn! Thank you, David. That's very generous.
Absolutely killing it. And I gotta say, DCC Prime throwing it 150. Oh my Lord. We have just hit $1.2 thousand in literally just like that. That was absolutely insane. Huge shout out to both of y'all because this fundraiser is killing it tonight. And speaking of killing it, the Ukrainians really are. And we were able to see that they were able to advance out of the built-up area today in the center area of Vovchansk and advance on into the residential areas just to the north and also a little bit to the west of the built-up area, which is exactly what we believed they were going to be hypothetically doing yesterday, considering that Russian forces in this area have probably been cut down by about a third, considering that 400 of them were captured inside of the area of the Vovchansk chemical plant. We are assuming that Russian forces are greatly weakened, and not only that, we are starting to see that today in terms of frontline advances. We were able to see the specific area that they advanced right here, and that is the area of advance, is this area in blue, and it does appear that they are once again starting to expand outwards and westwards, once again attempting to cut off the Russian forces that are further south inside of Vovchansk, and attempting to hold forward positions, which appears to be becoming more and more untenable as time goes by, especially considering that the Ukrainians look like they may be attempting an encirclement of this area. This will drive the Russians into a frenzy as far as their decision-making goes, because they will either have to hope that their Russian forces can hold in this area or begin to withdraw further north. If they withdraw further north, they are going to be giving up everything within the central area of Vovchansk that they still hold. If they hold, the Ukrainians will most likely encircle those Russian forces, putting the Russians into a serious dilemma, because only about a half-strength battalion will be left in the city that has not been completely surrounded or captured by this point, which is giving us a very, very clear indicator that the Russians are in a desperate situation. The Ukrainians are on the upper hand, and it looks as though the Ukrainians may be able to win this thing outright, as Andy L throws in a $100 donation to the fundraiser, getting it on up to 1.5. Absolutely unbelievable. We're already halfway there in just 18 minutes, which is literally insane. But moving on from that, we were also able to get additional footage today of one of the buildings, the aggregate building in a more northern area of the city, being hit pretty hard by Ukrainian bombs, which were dropped on the building today to try and give the Ukrainians some forward momentum, more so than just the overwhelming numbers they have currently inside of the city. The audio is added in post. And Dale Miller threw in a 200 to the fundraiser. Good lord, we are killing it, Matthew. This is actually crazy.
This is going so fast, they're killing it.
Slaw. I forgot they even had sound for the outro on the Slaw outro, or the War outro as it's called. But anyways, moving on from that and a little bit further south, we also got to see that while the Ukrainians were dropping guide bombs onto the Russians in the northern area of the city, the Russians were doing the exact same thing to Ukrainian forces in the south, desperately trying to slow their rapid advance through the city, considering that Russian forces are heavily outnumbered in this area currently. Here is footage of Russian glide bombs hitting the southern area of Vovchansk. And we can see them now making impact as an anonymous viewer throws in a $500 donation, getting the fundraiser up to $2,200. We are only $800 away from reaching the fundraiser goal, and we have only been live for about maybe like 8 minutes right now. 20 minutes overall, 8 minutes actually live on air. Absolutely insane.
Crazy. $2,200 raised already.
Man, I mean, that is nuts right there, man. That is absolutely crazy. Wildin' even. Wildin'. But we can see the Russians continuing to drop a massive amount of glide bombs onto southern Vovchansk. We can also see right here that they're actually dropping them into the built-up area, once again trying to slow the Ukrainian offensive efforts that occurred today, but of course falling in vain, not really being able to achieve any massive results in any real form. And we can see them once again dropping even more glide bombs into the built-up area. And that's the end of the clip, but still showing the massive exchange of fire, just in airdropped ordinances that happened today in between both sides. And we can see that things are going incredibly well, especially for the Ukrainian side, as the Russians, by dropping this many glide bombs, are not showing that the battle is going good for them. They're actually showing that the battle is going fairly badly. From what we understand, tactical air support on the Russian Air Force level is actually pretty rare to see, and that's something that a lot of people are like, well, what do you mean? Usually, and this is something that the United States actually takes as a granted thing, or really the entire Western world, including the British, the French, the Germans, the Poles, the United States, Canada, really every Western armed force takes for granted that we actually have a pretty advanced system of communication in between the ground forces and the air forces in Western countries. And a while ago, while we were talking on stream, I actually brought up that the Chinese do not have any JTACs, which are Joint Tactical Air Command personnel that usually coordinate close air support missions with the ground forces and the air forces. So that way the information that is needed by the air force to make sure that they avoid friendly fire, and so that way they know where the targets are, is given to them. That just does not exist in China. So the Chinese Air Force, at least for now, is usually relegated to strategic missions far behind the lines away from friendly forces, so that way they possibly don't create friendly fire incidents. Crazily enough, I was actually researching and reading about this over the past few days. the Russian Federation is actually in a very similar instance. Their Air Force is very rarely able to conduct close air support missions, and while the ability does exist in a very limited form, it does not really exist in a major form like you would see in the US Air Force or any other Air Force inside the Western world. And so going off of that, seeing a Russian close air support mission or a massive Russian close air support missions like the ones we just saw in Vovchansk are actually pretty difficult to conduct, and not only that, have to be done on an emergency level, considering that the ability for the Russians to be able to do something like this is almost non-existent, and we would assume due to the poor training, coordination, and really the quality of the forces in the Vovchansk front, these forces probably do not have anything close to a JTAC that can talk to the Russian Air Force and conduct these close air support missions. This means that right now, a commander on the ground most likely called back behind the lines to the 6th Army headquarters, wherever the backup headquarters is right now, said the situation is terrible. An entire Russian battalion, a half-strength battalion, was just wiped out of the chemical plant. The Ukrainians are advancing rapidly out of the built-up area and are overrunning Russian positions just outside of it. We require immediate support of whatever can be given, and mostly in the built-up area. And that means that the 6th Army commander, which is most likely a major general, then had to communicate with the Russian Air Force, and they had to quickly and immediately try and conduct emergency air support missions in this area to try and slow the Ukrainian advance, which it doesn't really look like they succeeded in that, but nevertheless, there was an attempt, and it did fail. But still, it is showing how desperate of a situation this really is. And it is once again giving us a very good indicator. The Russians are on their last breath, really, in this entire region. We would believe that they're probably not going to be able to make it that much farther in this offensive without a complete collapse, and we believe that the Ukrainians will be pushing the Russians out of Vovchansk here in the very, very near future, at least based off of current information. Meanwhile, behind the lines, we also got to see that a Russian electronic warfare system was also destroyed as well. I would assume that this thing wasn't working that well because it ended up getting destroyed by a drone, and if it was a good electronic warfare system, it wouldn't have had this happen. But there it is. And we can see it getting hit. And speaking of hitting, folks, the fundraiser is at $2,600 raised just 25 minutes in. We are less than $400 away from the goal right now, which is absolutely unbelievable in such a short amount of time. We are about to hit $3,000 in less than 30 minutes, meaning that we raised more than $1,000 a minute. And Trutzer won through an 100 as we are watching this electronic warfare system getting absolutely obliterated, meaning that we are now up at $2,700, less than $300 away from the fundraiser goal. Moving on from this electronic warfare news in the area, that is also once again showing that Russian electronic warfare is largely ineffective, and not only that, Ukrainian drone efforts, of course, something that operates on the electromagnetic spectrum, is able to operate even with electronic warfare systems present, possibly showing that electronic warfare systems of the Russian Federation are greatly outdated, or they may not be functional. However, moving on from that little bit of news and on down into another area of the Russian Federation, we were able to see that in Rosotv, a substation blew up. From what we understand, a Ukrainian drone may have hit the substation, but there have been some conflicting reports about what the actual cause of this explosion is. But here's the clip. Good morning. It's like, dude, that ain't good, man. I don't think the sun was supposed to rise and set that quickly. But that substation appears to have completely burned out, to be entirely honest with y'all. Of course, we could put that up to a poll if y'all would like, so that way we can double make sure that everyone agrees that this substation did blow up. But I would have to say that this substation did blow up. It looks like it to me, and Matthew, do you think that it blew up?
Seems like it blew up to me, a big one, like a real big explosion.
And while it blew up, the fundraiser blew up, and we hit the goal! Let's go! Let's go, baby!
Jaga, Igor!
Absolutely
Igor.
Crazy. We just hit the fundraiser goal. That is unbelievable. In 27 minutes. That is absolutely...
That was fast.
That is absolutely the fastest that I've seen recently. Incredible and wonderful to see. And of course, if y'all want to continue to support the fundraiser, y'all can. But once again, the Lee Spring Army stands triumphant tonight, reaching another fundraiser goal on another Sunday, and once again making sure that our streak is undefeated in terms of Ukraine support. The largest amount of Ukraine support ever provided by a single YouTube channel, and not only that, the most continuous streak of running fundraisers every single Sunday, and only one Sunday over 844 days of the war has been missed for a fundraiser. Absolutely unbelievable and wonderful to see. Huge shout out to all of y'all once again for reaching that, and hopefully we can get even way beyond that. But moving on from that news, we also got something that was really crazy in Rostov-on-Don today. I couldn't show y'all the actual footage because there was footage that came out today of what really went on, but I'll try and summarize it for y'all. Today, in a prison in Rostov-on-Don, there was a prison riot that was conducted by former members of ISIS that were captured by the Russian Federation, specifically ISIS-K, which is the one that usually has a lot more protein and vitamins in it. But beyond that, they were captured by the Russian Federation a while ago. They were put in this prison, and according to the information that we have, a prison riot occurred. Somehow these prisoners ended up overpowering a lot of the prison workers and employees, and are currently holding them hostage at this moment inside of the prison. The Russians are apparently responding and have also shut off telegrams in the area to try and quell the information that is spreading, but we can also see Russian riot police right here that were moving in to try and deal with the hostage situation. I don't know how they're going to deal with it, maybe bashing the guys in the head with the shields, but I'm not having high hopes.
Oh, Bliat, I thought Russia ran a very top-notch prison system, Bliat. I thought they had the utmost discipline, Bliat.
They do, Blade, but one day when the prisoners rise up, prison guards go, "Oh, don't hurt me," and so it all falls apart instantly. If you just show your teeth to prison guard, it's over. Like, they give up. Man, but still, with that, I hope that does give you all a pretty good rundown of what's going on in Rostov-on-Don right now. Information about that, though, is sparse. Like I said, a lot of Telegram channels have been pretty much blacked out in this area. We're not getting any information from them at the moment because the Russians have largely shut off any information relays in the area, so we don't really know much about what's going on in the Rostov-on-Don. But we are assuming that things are not going all too well down there for the Russian Federation and for the prison employees that were working at that prison. Very unfortunate for them, but hey, what can you expect? It's the Russian Federation. As John Doe throws in a $100 donation to Nova Ukraine. Absolutely unbelievable. Absolutely insane. And speaking of insane, we were able to see that the Germans have announced a brand new weapon system, and I was finally able to get at least a doctored up picture of what this is going to be looking like. Apparently, Rheinmetall is trying to come up with the Skynex Leopard. These are two pictures meshed together, one of a Leopard 1 hull and then the other of a Skynex turret. But this is a fairly rough approximation, actually not that bad of an approximation of what a Skynex Leopard would look like. It is the Skynex air defense system mounted onto a Leopard 1 hull, and this would allow the vehicle to be a lot more I guess you say capable in rough terrain conditions, and would allow it to excel a little bit better as a self-propelled anti-aircraft gun. It would operate very similarly to the Leopard 1, but it would be a little bit more potent, considering that the 35mm shells and the advanced targeting systems would make it a lot easier to shoot down incoming cruise missiles and drones, whatever this vehicle would be facing. It is a pretty neat concept. Of course, this is once again a Photoshop picture. I wanted to make sure to throw that out there again as a full disclaimer. This is not a real Skynex Leopard. This is a Photoshop of a Skynex Leopard to try and get an idea of what it will look like. But once again, the Germans are offering this to the Ukrainian market specifically, and I'm not really sure if they have plans to start exporting these to other buyers, but I have a feeling, to be quite honest, there would be a lot of buyers for this kind of an air defense system these days. A lot of air defense systems in the Western world, really in the entire world, have moved from being kinetic anti-air defense systems using some kind of a shell or a bullet, if you want to call it that. They have moved from that into being entirely missile-based, meaning that while the interceptions are pretty much a 100% chance of success if the target is detected, it also means that it's much more expensive per interception. For example, a Patriot missile costs approximately $1 million US. So that means if you want to shoot down a Shahed 136 drone with a Patriot, it costs $1 million to shoot down that $10,000 drone, which is economically unviable. And a lot of people are going, but it's war. Lives are more important than money. Well, say that when you run out of money, and then you find out that a lot of people's lives are being lost because you can't afford any weapons. So I just want to put that out there. Money is a very important thing in war, and being able to stretch the pocketbook farther than your opponent is a massive concern in every single war, especially in the modern day. And a Patriot missile system or a NASAMS missile system being used to shoot down every incoming air target is completely infeasible in the modern day. You would have to be the United States of America to be able to delve into that kind of deep expenditure and also that kind of expensive production capacity. Most countries do not have that ability. And to be quite honest, the United States would not have that ability in a drawn-out, protracted war that would span over the course of years. And so a Skynex Leopard-like system actually has a place in a modern armed force. And it's really funny because we saw that everyone, I'm not kidding, everyone in the Western world moved on from kinetic-based anti-air systems. And let me go pull up one and show y'all a good example with the United Kingdom, just as, a good look. And so, here we go. This is actually a Finnish version, but let me see if I can actually get one. Here we go. This is the only Chieftain MBT that has this weapon system mounted to it still. It looks as though that it was in Peterborough in the UK, and I'm assuming this thing is now at Bovington Tank Museum, but this is the Chieftain Marksman, which was a self-propelled anti-aircraft gun that was used by the the British Army during the times of the 1970s to the 1990s, I believe. There was a decent amount of them, actually. A lot of them ended up being retired, and they were replaced with something called the Stormer HVM, which we've actually seen in use a good bit in Ukraine, because the British gave them a lot of them. And so let me make sure to go get the Alpha Stormer, and here it is right here. This is what the modern British air defense system looks like, and it's a fairly interesting one. It's based off an armored personnel carrier, and I really want to quickly put this out there. There really is a very rare time when anti-aircraft systems are based off of a very specialized hull. Usually anti-aircraft systems, whether they be missile-based or kinetic-based using a gun, usually they are based on the hull of some other kind of a vehicle. For most self-propelled anti-aircraft guns, it usually is the hull of a main battle tank. For modern-day air defense systems, usually it's some sort of an armored personnel carrier that they attach the air defense system to. And the British actually mounted theirs to the, I believe it's the FV-432, which is the Stormer. And they put Starstreak missiles into a turret that is mounted at the top, and it has a small radar that is able to function, picking up targets at a few miles away. The Starstreak is fired, and unlike other air defense systems where the missile will explode near to the aircraft or on impact, the Starstreak is actually made up of 3 different small darts that pretty much fly in unison with each other, and I'm going to see if I can show you all that here in this picture. And so let me get this full screen. There we go. You can actually see it right here. The first stage detaches, and then you can see the second stage, which will, of course, give the Starstreak missiles a good boost. And once this second stage burns out, these little darts up here, you can actually see the 3 individual darts, will separate from the second stage and then fly with each other in a group towards its target. They all stay very close to each other, and they actually spin in a circle as they fly. It's a very hard thing to explain. It's very hard to talk about unless you had like an animation to depict how it works. But this is the British air defense system. There are no more self-propelled anti-aircraft guns in the British Army. There aren't really any more inside of the German Army or the French Army or the U.S. Army either, for that matter. We really don't have any systems like this left either. We pretty much have moved entirely onto Patriots and now THAADs as well, which are all missile-based. So now we're starting to see, because of the inexpensive drones that have been used in swarms and have proven to really overwhelm and defeat modern missile-based air defense systems, that a lot of companies are once again revisiting the idea of self-propelled anti-aircraft guns and are starting to see that these things have a lot of value on a modern battlefield. And there certainly will be a lot of buyers in a modern conflict for this. However, there are some drawbacks. Of course, with the modern advent of the electronic warfare field, and of course the massive fleshing out of that, especially by a country like the United States or China, a lot of people believe that most major conflicts would most likely not devolve into requiring a massive amount of self-propelled anti-aircraft guns, simply for the fact that electronic warfare will defeat most drones. They will not be able to fly because the electromagnetic spectrum will be largely messed up, in no better terms, and those drones will not be able to operate. And we have seen that a little bit in Ukraine, but another thing that we've also seen is that not all electronic warfare systems deployed have been effective. Most of them have ended up being ineffective, and that's why we see that drones are such an important part of the modern battlefield. And so it would be crucial, and we probably will see that the United States Army and the Marine Corps will most likely move into having some sort of kinetic weapons defense systems or self-propelled anti-aircraft guns like these. We'll probably also see that naval vessels, for example, U.S. destroyers like the Arleigh Burke class, may even be refitted in the future for specifically to fight against naval drones to have a much larger complement of secondary weapons, Orlikons, machine guns, and such things to be able to try and deal with naval drones that will be attacking these destroyers. As once again, the Ukrainians have shown in this war alone that blue water vessels that get very close to coastal areas, or sometimes not even that close to coastal areas in reality, the farthest away a Russian ship has been stricken by Ukrainian drones was pretty much off the coast of Turkey on the very southern end of the Black Sea. Naval drones are starting to show that they are incredibly dangerous to the Navy as well. And so the Navy, much like the Air Force and really the ground forces, will start to find ways to counter the drone threat that is starting to be posed to all branches of the armed forces in a modern conflict. But still, very interesting to look at from a technological perspective, and very interesting to see that the Germans are starting to once again spearhead that technological innovation, considering that a lot of people believe that the Germans were the ones to really invent the main battle tank, although some people claim that it was really the British with the Centurion. A lot of people do say that the real birth of a true MBT was with the Leopard 1 in Germany post-World War II. Anyways, that's enough of that. A lot of people have been saying that Putin may be permitted to attend the second peace summit for Ukraine. And a lot of people are wondering, will he attend? And that's something that's a little interesting because we actually know that Zelensky made a very interesting statement at the Peace Summit today, and we're actually about to go into that here in a second. But before we do y'all think that Putin is actually going to show up to that Peace Summit if he has possibly been permitted to even show up? What are all of y'all thinking about that? Matthew, do you think that Putin would show up, or do you think he'll pass if he's actually allowed to?
All right, so it looks like the audience, about 66% said no, Putin will not attend that summit, while 18% said he might, but it's pretty unlikely, and 10% said yes, Putin will probably attend it. And on this one, the big key here is it was going to be in, I believe, in Switzerland or something like that, wherever it's going to be held. Putin was going to be given immunity to go to the peace conference, so that way he would not be arrested on the arrest warrants when he showed up. So they're saying they're going to allow Putin to come there if he wants to, but the big question is, will he actually show up? And in my opinion, there's no way in hell that Putin is going to show up to that. He'll send somebody who's probably subordinate to him to go there, but he will not actually go physically himself because that really wouldn't make much sense. And also, he has really no incentive to go himself, considering he just send a representative. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say he'd probably send Sergei Lavrov, if anyone. He would certainly not show up on his own. It wouldn't be a good move for him. It wouldn't look that good. But also, they're not really looking that good, to be honest, overall, because the Kremlin, if you heard about this today, Matthew, it was hilarious. The Kremlin said, Zelensky, please, just think about what we said. Like it's like they're desperate for him to even start talking about peace. They're like, come on, man, please, like, really, please do. Like, we need peace. Like, it's like, that's not looking good. But still, nevertheless, I do not think that Putin will show up. However, speaking of the peace summits about Ukraine, we heard a very interesting statement that was put out today that is once again adding on, and many of y'all have been hearing about this on our channel, about Ukrainian-Chinese relations and Ukrainian-Chinese dealings. There was a very interesting thing that happened today as far as a statement went from President Zelensky that has raised some eyebrows. And I would have to say it's rightfully so, but we want to see what y'all think about this. I'm going to read the direct quote from Zelensky, and then I'll break down what I took from it, and of course y'all can tell me what y'all took from it. But according to Zelensky, he said, Ukraine has one enemy, it's Putin. He attacked us. As for friends, friends are those who help when it is difficult. I would like China to be a friend of Ukraine. And that was a direct quote from Zelensky today at the Peace Summit inside of Switzerland. Now, this is a very interesting thing, because while the statement is fairly neutral and it just sounds like Ukraine wants to be on good terms with everyone, this is something that has raised a serious concern for me, considering that this is a pro-Western channel looking out for pro-Western interests, and this statement appears to possibly be going in the opposite direction of Western interests. It is... And let me break down how I took this, and maybe y'all will see where I'm coming from or not, but, regardless, it's good to get an idea out there. He says, Ukraine views everyone in the world as a potential ally, meaning that the Chinese are a potential ally. And so he says, as for friends, friends are those who help when it is difficult. And that means friends are people who support Ukraine, not sit there on the sidelines. They support Ukraine, either physically or materially, because he has called the United States, although he also nowadays kind of says some condemning things about the United States, not doing enough or not supporting enough or leaving them out to dry at the beginning of the war. He still says that the United States is friends, and we support them physically and materially, and we get the title of friends, meaning that friends help Ukraine physically in some sort of way, either through material means or through other forms of support. And then he said he would like China to be a friend of Ukraine, meaning that he would like China to support Ukraine in some sort of a physical way. Now, this is something that is a little bit concerning to me, and I've of course said this before and went into a very in-depth analysis about this, because the Chinese are more than happy to draw other countries into their sphere. Even if they're not really in the One Belt, One Road program, the Chinese would like to try and get more trade partners or more people aligned to their sphere, because the more people they have in their sphere, the less are possible to be joining the Western sphere, which is led by the United States and the European Union collectively. This means that, from what Zelensky is saying, it is possible, entirely possible, that if the Chinese stepped out with some support to Ukraine and said, hey, look, we can give you this, they may accept that. And regardless of the strings that are attached, they may accept that, and then the consequences will strike them later on down the road, much like they have with many other countries that have been lulled into a sense of security by the One Belt, One Road initiative. And so I would have to say it is a little bit of an interesting statement. Maybe Zelensky is meaning this to just try and keep the Chinese on friendly terms and make sure that they do not end up supporting Russia in any major form, but saying something along the lines of, I would like China to be a friend to Ukraine, is a little bit interesting considering the stance. And also, let me tie this in really quickly as well, because a lot of people have always heard about Ukrainian grain this, Ukrainian grain that, and a lot of people were really confused as to why Ukraine grows grain in Eastern Europe, but when the grain started to be moved into Poland, there was this huge deal where they shut down the Ukrainian grain shipments, said, you're not sending that cheap crap into our country, keep it away, and then the Ukrainians started to sue everyone around them and then dropped the lawsuits later. The reason why is because almost no Ukrainian grain is shipped into Europe. It's actually shipped into other areas around the world, specifically the Middle East, and then their largest purchaser of grain, China. Interestingly enough, China actually buys about 25%, which is a quarter, of all Ukrainian grain exports. The rest, the other 75%, is made up of everyone else, but no one gets close to the amount of share that the Chinese have in Ukrainian grain purchases, meaning that Chinese food security, at least in the grain category, actually is tied in a pretty good bit to Ukraine, as they purchase a large amount of the grain at incredibly cheap prices. This means that the Chinese aren't just some fantasy monster in the distance that would try and seize on this opportunity when they really wouldn't. They have an incentive. Ukraine is one of their bread baskets that provides them with a decent amount of food. Even right now, that's where Ukraine is getting a good bit of their money from grain exports, is from China. That's also, I believe, where the ship was coming from today that ended up getting stricken inside of the Gulf of Aden was, I believe, back from the area of East Asia, or specifically from China. We'll have to check that here in a second, but nevertheless, it's a concerning thing, because if the Chinese are given an ability to get a backdoor into Ukraine, it is entirely possible that they are going to undermine all of the efforts that the Western world has taken, the tens of billions of dollars of support that we've thrown in, to pull Ukraine into a Chinese sphere. Not only that, it gives the Chinese another market to get into. China is looking into fledgling countries with growing economies to try and get their tendrils into to build their sphere, and Ukraine is one of those countries. It has a fledgling economy that is just starting to emerge and grow right before the war, and this is a perfect breeding ground for a Chinese sphere of influence growth operation. this is something that we do have to keep in mind, and I would have to say that it is a little bit concerning to me. But nevertheless, I've seen a lot of people throwing in different opinions on this, saying that Zelensky is just being diplomatic. Zelensky maybe trying to ally China. Zelensky just wants to make sure that China doesn't get involved on the Russian side. Loads of people are saying all kinds of different things, a load of different things currently about what this would mean. And Matthew, what are people thinking about this statement that Zelensky made today about the Chinese, and what do you think about it as well? What do you take it as?
So on Zelensky's China statements about potentially becoming friends, it looks like 34% said it's simply political talk by Zelensky, and that's simply that. And at 29% said Zelensky just wants peace with China to prevent Russia from getting an advantage. And 28% said Zelensky is trying to ally with China. And on this one, I first off want to start off by saying this, that just because I disagree with something Zelensky says does not mean that I do not support Ukraine. I support Ukraine 100%. They're fighting for their survival, and I will always support that. That's pro-democratic, and that is the right thing to support. However, on this, I will say, I think Zelensky is sort of walking into a trap. And some people are going to say, well, Zelensky knows best. He's been handling the country very well. But also keep in mind that Zelensky is prone to make mistakes just like every other leader. And I think he's about to make a big one with this. I'm actually with the 28%. I think Zelensky is trying to ally with China. And he'll basically accept help from anywhere he can get it, which is a mistake because the West is providing more than enough help to keep Ukraine afloat, as we've seen throughout the multiple years here. And Zelensky, I think he might be looking to China to maybe get some aid or also some financial support, which would obviously take the Ukrainian country away from the Western sphere, which would basically spit in the Western faces, which is not good. To me, I don't think this is wise. You should probably tell China we can be like on good terms, but it's going to be nothing more than that. It's something that's going to be good terms, and that's it. But there may be some talk behind the scenes that maybe we're not aware of, but I don't know. But from the surface, it doesn't look good to me. But Enforcer, what say you?
I just saw someone really quickly say Zelensky writes in bold strokes, "No harm developing good relations with China. It's wise statecraft." No, no, that is. I would actually have to disagree with that completely. Developing good relations for a small country with the Chinese is dancing with death for the large part. It's dancing with democratic death. It is dancing with the death of liberty and the birth of tyranny in every single country that deals with the Chinese. It is not a good idea to even try and align oneself with the Chinese, especially considering the rising tensions in between the Western sphere and China and the clear emergence of a growing Chinese sphere of influence. Not only that, but Chinese aggression, based off of their idea of national rejuvenation, is something that the Chinese are more than willing to prosecute around the world to achieve their objective of creating a major sphere and having China rivaling the United States in economic power or even surpassing them, both economically and militarily by 2049, is a major concern. The Chinese will take advantage of any situation that is put in front of them, and they are not an incompetent country on that level. China is a master of doing this, and they have been doing this in Eastern Africa, Central Asia, and also they're trying to move their influence into the Middle East here recently. Ukraine trying to deal with China and deal with them as a friend is starting to pose a bit of a conundrum. I'm going to be entirely honest here. The Ukraine is not a major. Let me actually be completely frank about Ukraine's diplomatic position in the world. They are a minor regional power, which means that diplomatic relations with a country inside of East Asia is completely unreasonable for them to believe that that is within their game. The United States, however, has an objective of having diplomatic relations around the world, as we are a global superpower level nation. Therefore, we have relations with the Chinese, and we actually have pull with the Chinese because of our massive economic tie-in with them. Ukraine does not really have a massive economic tie-in, and I know a lot of people are going to be saying, well, they have the grain. But the problem is that right now, the position we're talking in, the Ukrainians are in the less advantageous position of that relationship, as the Ukrainian economy relies on shipping that grain out so that way they can try and float the economy and have it survive during wartime. This means that the Chinese are in the position to leverage. I don't think so. Here we go. Now we're back. And so hopefully everyone heard what I was saying right there. Right now, to recap that, The Ukrainians, as far as their relations in grain shipments to China, are on the the economic disadvantage, as the Chinese have the ability to walk away from that grain and go buy grain from elsewhere, although it may be more expensive, but the Ukrainians have nowhere else to sell the grain right now. Europe has made it very clear that they're not going to be taking it on, and that means that that grain will be going somewhere like China, meaning that they are at the disadvantage in that position. That also means that the Chinese have an advantageous role in playing around with the Ukrainian foreign policy, or more so, Ukrainian support. They can take advantage of this, and they can take advantage of Ukraine's weakened economic position because of the war by offering them a very good deal, a deal that they cannot refuse. And I'm not even kidding. The Chinese make deals like this all the time. With Uganda, they actually paid for the Ugandan nation to build a new and advanced railway transportation system throughout a large part of the country. And it's actually a pretty nice looking railroad, no lie. Like, it's actually not that bad. And let me see if I can pull it up. Chinese Ugandan Railroad. And so let's see. So let me see if I can get this right here. Let's see, Uganda. Let's see. Let's see here. I need to go find this really quickly. Let's see. 1 second. Sadly, that was going to be a little bit harder to find, but Chinese Ethiopian dam. Let me go get that one instead. And so, here we go. This is going to be a pretty good one to show. This is a picture. Sadly, it's the only picture they have, but this is a picture of a massive dam that was being built in Ethiopia just a few years ago. And this dam is being completely funded by the People's Republic of China, or Communist China. The thing is that the Ethiopians were given a deal that they couldn't refuse. This dam will provide electricity to a large part of Ethiopia, and the Chinese are offering that they will cover all the expense to be able to build this dam and make it a usable thing for Ethiopia to have reserved fresh water, and not only that, usable electricity as well. It is an amazing offer for Ethiopia, because Ethiopia is a country that economically has not done too well recently. They're kind of a bit in an economic stagnation period, and so this could be a massive revival of the Ethiopian economy, allowing them cheap fresh water and cheap electricity, all on the Chinese expense. The thing is, however, is that the Chinese give this to them as a loan. They say, we will finance all of this, but this is a loan that has to be repaid over time. And then the Ethiopians will not be able to deal, and we already know this because the Ethiopians have been talking about it, they are not able to deal with the interest installments. The interest installments on these loans are absolutely insane. It is truly loan sharking on a nation-to-nation level. That's how the Chinese are able to draw these countries in. The Ethiopians, on a governmental level, will default on this loan eventually. And then at that point, the Chinese have complete economic control over the nation of Ethiopia, and therefore they have complete political and diplomatic control over Ethiopia as well, drawing them completely into the Chinese sphere of influence, and that is the end of anyone else ever having a foot inside of Ethiopia. The United States will not be able to go there. Russia will not be able to go there. That is now a Chinese satellite nation, for all intents and purposes. The Ukraine could be offered a very similar deal. And think about it. What kind of things could China come in and offer? Well, there's a lot of dams that have been damaged. The Novokakhovka Dam, the Dnipropetrovsk Dam. We even understand that the dam just north of Dnipro may have possibly been damaged as well. And then there are also several additional dams of smaller size up in the area around Bucha Hospital and Irpin on the Kiev Sea that also have been damaged and knocked out as well, and never really repaired. And China could come in, just as this as an example, and say, the West is not wanting to help y'all with those dams. We could. We will rebuild all of them. But y'all will have to repay us for all of the money that it'll take to do this. And Zelensky could go, wow, like the electrical grid of Ukraine is down by 50% right now. It is only at 50% capacity because most of it has been knocked out. And Zelensky could go, wow, that's really going to help Ukraine to get back on the up and up. We need to accept that deal. And I'm sure the Chinese mean nothing bad by this. China is nothing more than a good neighbor. And that's what Zelensky has kind of put out there, is his idea. Everyone in the world, except for Russia, is a good neighbor country to Ukraine. They're fine with being friends with anyone. And that means that the Chinese could come in and be a good friend by tying them down to pretty much a shark loan. And then eventually, they're not able to pay that back. The Ukrainian government will default on that loan. And then from then on, just like Ethiopia, the Ukrainian government will be completely dominated economically by China, politically by China, and diplomatically by China. So it would not matter that BlackRock was there. It would not matter that the United States sends tens of billions of dollars to Ukraine and lend-leased an additional multiple billions of dollars of military equipment. All of that will have been for naught because the Chinese will have come in and aggressively, almost in like a corporate style, taken over and made sure that Ukraine is yanked into a Chinese sphere instead of a Western one. And all of our investment, all of our support for Ukraine will have been for literally nothing. It would have gotten the West absolutely nothing. We wouldn't be benefiting from this. China would be benefiting from this. And really, in the end, ironically, the Russians would actually be benefiting from this as well. And so I would have to say, and also, a lot of people are like, what do you mean the Russians are benefiting? Well, the Russians are already clearly in the Chinese sphere. They're the largest member of the Chinese sphere, but it's already happened. Putin has made that very clear by saying that China is the way forward when he was talking to Tucker Carlson, that they already believe that they are a minor member of a Chinese sphere, although they're still trying to attempt to reach out and conduct their own imperial ambitions for the large part. So all of this put together will lead Russia and Ukraine in a very weird roundabout way, ending up in pretty much the exact same sphere of influence after the war. It will just take a few years for that to happen. This is something that I have to say should be avoided. And I'm seeing some people saying President Zelensky is no fool. Well, maybe he's not, but I would have to be honest with y'all. A lot of national leaders are not fools. A lot of them are not. Like Ethiopia is not a fool. I mean, like in reality, while they're going to end up being pretty much slaves to the Chinese in the end, that dam is actually going to help out Ethiopia massively. That's why it's a deal they couldn't refuse. Like, those leaders were actually kind of smart in taking that deal. Honestly, the United States should have offered them a deal like that, so that way we could have made sure that none of these countries would go the Chinese way, they would go the American and Western way. But we ended up not getting there first. The Chinese did, and now they're going to make them debt slaves to the Chinese permanently, and make sure that they are a part of their sphere. And Ethiopia, by the way, like, China isn't just gathering up these countries to put them into financial destitution. China is actually going to grow Ethiopia economically. It's going to happen. And Ethiopia will end up being a fairly economically prosperous country because of their Chinese-Ethiopian relations. But at the same time, they were indebted to the Chinese, became debt slaves, and were not able to conduct any of their own relations beyond that point, completely losing out on a Western opportunity. That's the same thing that we might see in Ukraine. And I'm trying to explain this as best I can because it does not matter how smart of a leader you think someone is. The Chinese will deceive you. Deception is the main way that the Chinese work. Like, not as a people, but on a national level. That is their game. They play it very well. They've done it exceedingly well. They've done it so well that people in America believe that the Chinese have already outdone America. And most people in America, no matter what side of the aisle you're on, would believe that it's completely futile to do anything against the Chinese because they are the power of this century. It's over for us. That's what a lot of people have been led to believe, although when you look beyond the surface and into reality, that's not necessarily true at all. Like, I was out the other day, and someone told me that BRICS is flourishing, and China has way exceeded the United States in economic and military ability. The United States is just a wayward nation of the past, gone for good. And a lot of people would go, oh, well, that's ridiculous. And it is ridiculous. But Chinese soft influence, Chinese deception, and Chinese subconscious propaganda has led people to actually believe that. Now, if you think that they can do that to most of the population in one of the most powerful countries in the world, the most powerful country in the world, what in the world do you think they can do to one man, which is Zelensky, if they focus a lot of effort in deception and really some nice trickery into getting him into some kind of a deal? That's how they work. And I would not trust this at all. I would have to be quite honest. I believe that the United States should strongly word a statement to Zelensky saying that statements like that should not be accepted. Because a lot of people are going to go, that sounds kind of authoritarian. Maybe it is, but I would say that this is something that we cannot risk. We have put way more into Ukraine than China ever will. And I'm not going to see all of this effort that the West has put into supporting Ukraine and helping them to end up winning this war end up being for absolutely nothing because the Ukrainians go to the Chinese sphere several years later. And so
I've got an alternative for you real quick. I don't want to like dig the rabbit hole too deep, But real quick, here's a hypothetical. And also, people, I'm not trying to get political with this. I'm going to avoid politics completely. So please don't take it that way. But for example, if in the future, the near future, if Ukraine aid gets cut off by the United States, would you still be opposed to Ukraine going to China for support? Because do you think the EU on its own could actually support Ukraine enough to be able to ward off the Russians for the long term? Or would Ukraine be fine?
If the United States did not support Ukraine, I would say that they would clearly go to the Chinese. Because if we're talking about a Ukrainian position, it would only be smart for them at that point to move to a country that would actually be able to protect their interests. The European Union can help them, it can help Ukraine a great deal, but it's really the European Union and the United States, the collective West, that is able to support and help out Ukraine. So if the EU dropped out and it was just America supporting Ukraine, or if America dropped out and it was just the EU supporting Ukraine, that would be enough questionability for to drive the Ukrainians over to the Chinese side. That would be my opinion on that. And there's nothing negative about that at that point. But right now, in the position we're in, we have the United States and the European Union both supporting Ukraine in a massive degree. They have the support of the collective West right now. So to allow the Chinese in a backdoor and possibly start undermining all of our efforts, it's not a good thing. And I would say that this is something that we should not allow to even have as a possibility. And a lot of people are saying,
I personally, if it came down to the U.S. cutting off support, I think you'd see the EU suddenly step up tremendously and find money where they didn't even know they had money to support Ukraine. Because if they truly believe that if Ukraine falls, then other countries are next in Europe, then they would immediately find all the money they could to throw at Ukraine, like the United States was doing, to make sure their security is guaranteed. So even in that scenario, I was curious too what you thought about it. Even in that scenario, I probably would not support Ukraine going to China, because to me, that would still be the same scenario. And I think Europe would pick up the tab where the United States left off.
well, I would not support Ukraine going to China, but the thing is that from their position, they would be looking at a unified Chinese front versus a split Western front. Because if you have the support of Europe, but you don't have the support of the main man of this entire sphere, you're going to be thinking, what would happen if something serious came down the pipe? Where in the world would be the leader of the sphere? We wouldn't be there. And that's the example that they would be getting at that moment. They'd be going, on the other hand, the Chinese would probably always be there. So let's go with them instead. So, you know, while I would never support the Ukrainians going to the Chinese, from a Ukrainian decision-making perspective, if America isn't supporting them and Europe at the same time, it would make more sense to go with the Chinese than with the West. So that's really an important thing as well, as to making sure that we continue to support, but we also have a strong urging to make sure that Ukraine doesn't even look tempted by the Chinese side of affairs. And I'm seeing a load of people saying, you might be wrong on this. Maybe I am. I'm not going to say I'm perfectly right on this, but I am going to say that this is something that I find, on my personal opinion, quite concerning as far as the development. Now, I might be wrong in the future, and I'll eat my foot if I'm wrong about this entire ordeal. But if we watch over the next 2 months and we see that a Chinese diplomatic envoy arrives in Ukraine, and we hear that Zelensky is going to be allowing Chinese support, y'all will know that I was right. And then by that point, it probably will have been too late to stop things. And that is something that is not going to end up going all too well. And let me make this quite clear. China is never going to provide lethal support to Ukraine. Because the Chinese, to explain a lot about them, and I really do need to make a long-form documentary video on the Chinese are not a warring nation at heart. They actually believe in the art of war by Sun Tzu, which says that the best way to fight a war is to not fight one. Meaning that you should conduct every single action that you can that is not war itself, to try and win over your opponents. What the Chinese call that in the modern day is it's NWMA, which is non-war military activities. And it is something that they exceed extremely well at. That's what they do. And they are masters of this craft. I mean, China is a land of philosophers. Thousands of years of Chinese philosophy grew parallel to the Roman philosophies that built up this Western world. And their philosophy is a really interesting one. It's actually incredibly interesting. It's incredibly in-depth. It requires a decent amount of study. I don't know a lot about it, but I do know what it has translated to in the modern world based off of what others have studied and what I've read from them. And it is certain and clear to me that the Chinese will use this moment right now to win the war in Ukraine for their sphere without even getting involved in providing a single weapon. They won't provide a single bullet to Ukraine. They're probably, to be quite honest with y'all, not even providing a single bullet to the Russians. Of course, they'll provide like the go-karts and everything, but from what we know, they're probably not supplying a lot of lethal aid to them, if at all. All of this is on an economic level, and they are seeking to tie the Russians in economically, which has already happened very well over the course of this war over 844 days. And now, if they can also draw Ukraine in, it's a win-win. I mean, the Ukrainians won't be going to the Western Sphere if they were able to work this out the right way for them. Neither will the Russians. The Russians will be going straight into China's pocket, and Ukraine may be as well, if we don't play this thing right. And so, I hope that does address that at least the best I can, and I'm still seeing a lot of people disagreeing with me, and that's totally fine. This is, of course, just a discussion, and I'm just throwing out my opinions on what this is looking like to me, and I could be wrong, y'all could be wrong, who knows? We'll just have to let time tell and see what actually ends up unfolding and happening. But nevertheless, I hope we were able to at least talk about this fairly well and throw out my apprehensions, and we'll circle back around whenever news about this comes out again and see what side was right. Was Zelensky smart enough to actually outsmart the Fox, or was he not? And we'll find out in the future, I suppose. But with that, I hope we covered that incredibly well. I feel like we covered that the best we could, Matthew. We literally covered every single base. But with that, I also see that a lot of people have been asked about a very interesting statement that has been made by the president of Serbia. And we have heard the Serbian president today say that a major Russian-West confrontation is only 3 to 5 months away, I believe. 3 months away was really what he went with in the statement. But I think I heard at some point that he said 5 months. But a lot of people are wondering, is that true? Like, is the president of Serbia some kind of a soothsayer, and he's got the information correct, and he just knows that a war is going to be coming around the corner? Some people are saying that's possible, but unlikely. Some people are saying that that's certainly false, and some people are saying that it's probably true, and war is coming. But Matthew, a lot of people have all kinds of different opinions on this deal, and what are you thinking about it, and what is everyone else thinking about that as well?
All right, so after we heard Serbia's president, who kind of honestly gives me some Jeffrey Dahmer vibes, I don't know why, when he was talking today, he's kind of like talking like a serial killer, but Serbia's president warns that a major Russia/West confrontation is only about 3 to 4 months away. And what are your thoughts? And 33% said it's possible but unlikely, while 32% said it's probably false because Russia will not act, and 27% said it's probably true and it's coming soon. So with this, I'm not exactly sure what he meant by a major Russia/West confrontation. I can only assume he meant like maybe Russia attacking NATO, and in my opinion, that is not going to happen in the next 3 to 4 months, and probably not going to happen in the next couple of years at least, as long as the West keeps basically together and coordinated with the Ukrainian aid. I don't think that's going to happen. So whatever got into the Serbian president to say that, I would have to disagree. And, you know, I think Serbia is kind of like pro-Russian aligned, aren't they?
Yes.
They're really not exactly pro-Western. So he's probably making that statement to try to make it seem like Putin's like a real, you know, tough-ass type of guy that might come after the West if we're not careful. I'm not really sure what that was about, but I don't agree with it. But Enforcer, what say you?
I disagree with it. I don't think a war is going to be happening with Russia and the West here soon. The Russians are too weak to be able to conduct that war at the moment. And not only that, what the hell would Serbia know about that? Like, really? You know, it's like they're a country in the middle of the Balkans. They're surrounded by NATO and EU members. And on top of that, Serbia is Russian aligned, 100%. They've been Russian aligned since World War I, and they've stayed that way permanently, except for under the time of Tito in Yugoslavia. Then they were kind of a little bit on the fence with the Soviet Union and weren't exactly in with them, but they weren't really out with them. They were kind of like the neutral middle ground in between the West and the Soviet Union or the Warsaw Pact. But nevertheless, in the modern day, Serbia once again went back to the Russians because at the collapse of Yugoslavia and the creation of modern Serbia, the Serbs ended up going to war with the Kosovans, or what we would call the ethnic cleansing of Kosovo. And that was a serious concern at the time. It was a massive humanitarian thing, so NATO got involved pretty quickly. But at the same time, the Russians also got involved on the Serbian side. And while the Russians were not really in a position to be doing anything at that time, they did get involved. And there were some pretty heated exchanges in between NATO and the Russian Federation during that time in the Kosovan situation. The Serbs are mostly from what I can recall, Eastern Orthodox nation, meaning that religiously, historically, they would align with the Russians, and that's usually why they've been historic allies for an incredibly long time. And the area of Kosovo is actually inhabited largely by an Islamic group, which is the Kosovans that live in this area. The Serbs consider them a plight on the land and want them to be pretty much genocided. They do want to wipe them out. But they never conducted a full-on genocide. They ended up conducting what's called an ethnic cleansing, but they still killed a large amount of Kosovans. NATO got involved, Russia got involved, and since then, the parameters in between Serbia and Russian relations have been clearly defined. Kosovo is supported by NATO. Serbia is supported by the Russian Federation. And that's how things have been since about 1992, 1993. And so going off of that, Serbia is certainly saying something to try and put on the strongman suit for the Russians and make them sound like a big, scary guy. Because there's no way in hell, given the current strategic situation of the Russians, that they would ever be able to conduct a conventional war inside of Eastern Europe, ever, at this point. They would have to completely stop fighting the Ukraine war and focus entirely on NATO to even make that slightly feasible. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can at the moment. And with that, we're now going to be moving on from that news and on into our location unknowns. And we actually have a couple of interesting ones. We were able to see an Uragan firing a rocket. That was actually a really cool picture, and it shows the size of an Uragan rocket. It's a 220 millimeter sized unguided rocket. Pretty cool.
Very cool. I like that. A lot of fire behind it. I like it when there's some fire.
Man, I love some fire, man. I'm like a Russian like that. I'm like, but anyways, on top of that, also, man, I just realized that the fundraiser is at almost $4,000 raised in an hour and 10 minutes, which is absolutely incredible, unbelievable, actually. And I just realized, man, that we need to shout out those top donors tonight. And so, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so let's shout out those top donors, not shout them up. We're going to shout them out. And the first one here goes to David Romano, who puts in a $500 donation, along with Griffin Provenzano, who was that anonymous donor who also put in $500 as well. Huge shout out to David and also Griffin for the two largest donations of the night to Nova Ukraine. That is massive support.
Hey!
Also, we have a $200 from Dale Miller, as well as a $150 from DCC Prime 1. And then we have a $100 from some guy called the Enforcer, along with Hal Rose, Andy L, Trister 1, Tom S. We also have $100 from Alan Matthews, as well as John Doe, and Key to Between, Chuck Farley. And then we had a $50 from William Cullison, Axel K, James Roberts, Richard Chandler III, as well as a $50 from Greg Carrier, Richard Ham, Dad Good, as well as Maximo Grouillon, as well as a $50 from Johnny B, and also Josh Christie, Panama Floyd, and Mike Smith. And those are all of the top donors so far of the night. And once again, a grand total of about $4,000 raised, which is about $1,000 above the goal on the fundraiser. So huge shout out to everybody once again for supporting tonight's fundraiser. It's another successful one, and it's all thanks to the LSA. And it's going to a great cause as well. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say a huge shout out to every single one of y'all. Both the folks we were able to call off on the top donors list and everyone else who threw in support, but we were not able to call off because so many of y'all were so numerous, it would be really hard to do that. Also, a huge shout out to Randy Tosto, who just threw in a 50. Massive shout out to you as well. Every single one of y'all makes these fundraisers possible. It makes it a reality for us to be able to continue to say that the Lee Spring Army is one of the biggest pro-Ukraine, pro-Western organizations out there in the world right now, and is continuing to make sure to provide support to the actual people that we talk about every single day. It is an incredible thing, and I got to thank all of y'all so much once again for supporting that fundraiser and helping to make the Lee Spring Army's continued support to Ukraine a never-ending reality. And so a huge shout out to John Kustra as well, who just threw in a 100 Canadian. Unbelievable stuff, and I hope we were able to address that fairly well. And also, man, you understand that we have a couple of questions from the chat.
So we've got a few questions here. I've been looking at some very good questions. And of course, up first, we have the Morse code decoders of the stream. And tonight, it was Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Bernew, Paul Schultz, Kevin J, Rumble Stilchin, and also David Millsaps. And a huge shout out to all the Morse code decoders of the night. And they said, Enforcer, LSA Signal Corps Morse report tonight says the Russians are getting beaten pretty badly nowadays, and don't think they will hang in there in LSA.
And and that's the sound of money. And I gotta say that you were dead on the nail. That was the Morse code message of the night. I get to congratulate all of y'all for getting that right day in and day out. I don't know how y'all do it. I don't even know how y'all listen to that Morse code message and get a message out of it, but nevertheless, y'all do, and it is very impressive. And so I got to thank y'all once again for getting that dead on the nail every single time. And with that, we are on to the second to last question of this segment.
All right, and this one goes to Nick LSA, who puts a good live chat question here. He says, is there an update on the kidnapped kids in Russia?
Sort of, kind of. We don't get an actual update on their condition on a daily basis, but we do get to hear about them from time to time, and we do understand that there's still thousands, I believe over 10,000 Ukrainian children at a bare minimum that are still inside the Russian Federation, and the Ukrainians are constantly attempting some negotiations for their release back into at least Ukrainian state custody until their parents can be found, or if their parents are deceased, they will be taken care of by the state of Ukraine. We don't really hear a lot about it. Every once in a while, we'll hear about a major transfer of several hundred children back to Ukraine at a given time, but I believe the last time something like that happened was about a month and a half ago. So I hope that that does give a fairly good idea of what's going on with that, at least based off of the very splotchy information that we get on it. And with that, we are on to the final question of the segment, and then we're going to be moving back into the news.
All right, and this one goes to Brianna Joy, who says, do you think the EU would want a Chinese puppet state on their borders?
Honestly, I think they'd be kind of fine with that. Because the thing is, and this actually starts getting into a lot into diplomacy. But the thing is that France right now, I'm trying to find out a way to even explain this very intricate web. So just bear with me. If it doesn't make sense, just let me know in the chat, and I'll try and circle back around and cover some stuff and try and make it a little bit more clear. Also, are we lagging right now? Oh, come on. Come on. Right when I'm about to get to that explanation, let's give it a moment. And it should fix itself. And it's stabilizing, it seems. Hopefully. Hopefully. Maybe. It looks like it is. So, now, to begin that explanation, I think they would be fine with having a Chinese puppet along the EU borders. Mostly because France is trying to make themselves the leader of a new European sphere, creating a multipolar world, splitting the Western sphere in two, but nevertheless, they are trying to be the leaders of a European sphere that's separate from really the West as a whole. We've seen that the France have jockeyed with the Chinese diplomatically, possibly trying to move the European Union into being a bit of a middle ground in between China and America. So if there was a Chinese-aligned nation in their sphere of influence that was directly along their borders like Ukraine, in the future, if that split in the Western sphere did happen, they probably wouldn't be bothered by that all too much, in my honest opinion. So with that, I hope that does address that well, at least in the most summarized form that I can, because it is very difficult to explain that relationship without going into an entire college level lecture on it. That would take about an hour. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And with that, we're going to be getting back into the Location Unknown news, where we got to see some pictures of the Thoid Brigade in training. Look at these folks. They look like some mean folks right here. And that's a nice AK-74. But that's the end of that little bit of pictures right there. Nice to see them in training. And moving on from that, we also got to see some new Ukrainian drones being used by the Ukrainian ground forces. And of course, presented by none other than the amazing United 24. And so, without further ado, here's the clip.
As everyone knows, drones have become an essential part of the war between Russia and
Ukrainians
Ukraine.
are trapped.
But up until this point, most drone systems in action are in the air, so flying. However, in the past years, a lot of time, money, and effort has been put into the development of ground-based systems. And today, that is exactly what we will see. It's called D2111. It was developed and manufactured locally here in Ukraine, and the producers feel that it's ready to be actually put into action. The D2111 can do many things. If you put a machine gun on it, it's basically a killer robot. If you take the machine gun off, it can be used to evacuate dead or wounded soldiers, and also to bring supplies, ammunition, water, food, whatever, to the guys in the first lines in the trenches. So today, the developers will introduce their drone, show what it can, what it can't do to a brigade of the Ukrainian army, the 3rd Separate Assault Brigade. And after that, one of the drones will be presented to them, and they will take it into war.
Like with every new system, understanding it and learning how to use it is essential before deploying it in a combat environment where any mistake can have huge consequences, from losing the robot in the best case to losing human lives in the worst.
Задня нижня, задня нижня, задня верхня і передня верхня.
Пробіл, який
дає стрільбу чергами. Все, ми насипаємо. Те саме можна зробити і тут. Натискаємо два гачки, знімаємо запобіжник і починаємо стріляти. Скільки кулемет може, стільки і стріляє. Тут якби питання в тому, як ми налаштуємо. В процесі пристрілки ми налаштовуємо режими стрільби, там у нас 1, 3, 5, 10.
The system can be reworked from a transport mechanism to a deadly weapon in only a few minutes. The adjustments can be done directly on the front line.
О, є. Вкидається він, в принципі, от сюди в направляйку і одразу фіксується. Все. Пробуємо.
Давай. Есть, в правый попал.
So it took them just a couple of minutes to mount the machine gun on the chassis, and it really feels like something from the movies of my childhood has come true. Terminator or Matrix. The time of the killer robots has come for sure.
The advantages are clear. Where you would otherwise need a human to pull the trigger, the machine gunner can now assault the enemy remotely. But while assaulting is undoubtedly the most dangerous task, a close second is getting to and from positions even if they are under Ukrainian control. Russian FPV, artillery and mortar units are always looking for troops on rotation when they have to leave cover and move through the open. Unmanned ground vehicles like the D-2111 are supposed to ease all these tasks, from assisting assault units by providing fire support to bringing supplies, or by serving as an off-road taxi.
15 кілометрів проїжджав. Зимою 15, влітку 20 десь. На одній. Ну, як, їздили по пересічній місцевості, і це по часу зайняло практично світовий день. Зранку до вечора, тобто ми не розрядили за день.
To be honest, it feels a little bit like something rich people would invent so they don't have to walk anywhere. It has headlights, brake lights, indicator, this bar to hold on to. But if someone's shooting at you or things are exploding around you, or you're just tired because you haven't slept in 3 days, then you're probably really grateful that this thing can take you where you need to go. So it's quite a nifty creation, to be honest.
Commanders like Jorik are hoping to save lives and manpower with these machines, a resource that has become increasingly scarce as the war in Ukraine progresses.
First of all, we need logistics, and we want to minimize human loss, so that robots fight, not people. It saved many lives, so it has the right to be on the battlefield to continue developing.
With unfolded seats, the D-2111 can transport a heavily wounded soldier to safety, a task that would usually require 4 men. That often means leaving and giving up a position. With a robot like this, not only can the remaining soldiers stay at the front lines, but the robot can even bring a healthy soldier as a substitute before evacuating the wounded.
Тобто ти їдеш отак, якщо людина їде передом, не бачить яму, він падає, він провалюється в яму, і ти отак от вилітаєш головою прямо в цей.
Чуть-чуть, может, себя подстраховать там, типа.
А так ти вперся в цей і лежиш.
They're gonna send in a healthy soldier as a substitute, so they're gonna put him like on the cart right there and let him be brought in like Uber Eats and like just like hand him off for the wounded one.
I mean, I guess. Well, let's see how that goes.
Wounded.
Тобто ти їдеш отак, якщо людина їде передом, не бачить яму, він падає, він провалюється в яму, і ти отак от вилітаєш головою прямо в цей.
Чуть-чуть, может, себя подстраховать там, типа.
А так ти вперся в цей і лежиш.
UGVs are just starting to be used in large
I still
numbers.
don't get it. Like, I'm trying to sit here and understand it. So I guess they go, oh, he's wounded. Quick, hop on the buggy, and then they just roll in a new one. That's a little interesting. Also, what would stop them from getting hit by a drone on the way? You know what I mean?
Yeah, you know, that's those rich people robotics and drones and stuff like that. That's the ones those rich people make.
Man, I say that we should have socialist drones. But anyways, getting back to the clip.
But with the war becoming ever more deadly, robots like the D-2111 are set to provide some much-needed relief for the armed forces of Ukraine, where many soldiers are now well into their third year of war.
But that's the end of the
That
clip.
drone talks in rich.
Man, dude, that drone comes up and goes, sorry, plebeian, your credit score isn't good enough for me. And then just rolls away. It's like, all right. But anyways, moving on from that, we did get
I guess
to
the
see
United 24 reporter hasn't heard of like the cost of the F-16s or the other equipment. It's even way more expensive than the drone.
Or maybe they haven't heard about an electric wheelchair. You know, like this feels like something a rich person would ride. It's like, believe it or not, in America, that's actually kind of normal for everyone. Like, it's like kind of cool, right? But anyways, speaking of something that only rich people would have, the 60,000 euro surface drone, the Stalker 5.0, really puts the Ritz into being a stalker. Check that thing out. I mean, they got that massive outboard motor. They got that nice little camera up top. I mean, this thing looking nice. And I got to say, hopefully it's doing a good job. But
they do have this one in the mansion, though, so maybe it's like normal for robotics to be like showcased in like the rich people's mansion or something.
Man, here in America, it's like the robotics team of your high school with like $5 and like some plywood and a motherboard to get this stuff done. But with that, really interesting to see. And Matthew does have a good point. It is in a mansion. And moving on from that, we also got to see a Russian shoot a drone before it hit him and then run away like Forrest Gump. Look, he's like, oh, bleh. And he's like, oh, bleh, and then he goes running away. So, looks like he made it. But he's kind of lucky, very fortunate. But moving on from that, it's now time to get into the Russian casualty report, which was also fairly nice.
Oh, 3 Bobcats. I love to see it. I'm telling you what, juicy losses, juicy.
Man, I'm telling you what, and 1,160 Russian soldiers were wounded and killed over the past 24 hours, along with 6 armored personnel carriers, 56 supply trucks, 0 tanks, interestingly enough, 58 artillery pieces, 11 drones, 1 MLRS, 3 cruise missiles, and 3 Bobcat skid steers. All in all, today was a really good day. And we like to see these kinds of numbers because they're once again reminding us that the Russians are doing badly. And that's all there is to take from this. But moving on from that and into our next bit of news, which is actually on the front lines in the northern area, we were able to see a very close call that a Ukrainian drone had as Estrella fired at it and missed. Also, we have the Joker down here for no reason, just for fun. But we can see here the Estrella has spotted the drone. It is now firing, and oh, it's coming very close. Look at that. Dang, that thing is really getting close. Might actually hit the drone. Oh, hello. Oh, hello there. And right over the top, missed it. And the drone is fine. And the Russians are like, blyat, like we missed.
That was an expensive miss.
And now they scoot along. They're like, get the hell out of here, blyat. We missed. Here we miss. Because we do not have the Mr. B. Oh, and they left one behind.
Oh,
as usual. And so with that, that's the end of the clip. Very nice to see. And we're now going to be moving on further down the line where we got to see a Russian T-62M that was destroyed. Observe. Here it comes. Right into the front of the tank. Hits dead on. Tank is gone. That thing be smoking. Ain't that something? With that, that's the end of that clip. And we're now going to be moving on from that one and further on down and into the Kremenna front, where we got to see what a Ukrainian troop rotation looks like in the area for the 3rd Brigade. It was very interesting to see. We hear a firefight going on as these troops are moving forward. We see artillery explosions happening as the soldiers get down. And sadly, we're going to have to mute this for copyright reasons, but we can hear them yelling to hurry up as this, I believe it's a fire team-sized group, is moving up to replace another squad on the line. Of course, we can see the destruction ubiquitous with the Severonsky forest at this point. The entire forest looks like this. And we see them trying to make their way forward as explosions and firefights still permeate the battlefield right in front of them. We see them continuing to try and make their way forward. We can see the point man has gotten really far ahead. He's really scooting. We now see our camera person is also starting to scoot as well through this somewhat open clearing as they continue to negotiate the tripping hazards that lie across the ground everywhere. And we see them finally making it into the trench, into somewhat relative safety, although still not safe. And the clip ends right there, but still showing the kind of danger that even rotating troops on the front line can endure. But moving on from that and all the way down to the Avdiivka area, we also got to see that 2 Russian tanks were hit today by the 110th Brigade's FPV pilots. I always like to hear this.
Boogeyman music.
Man, I always like to hear the sound that you hear whenever an alien's about to start stealing your kidney. Okay, that's not it. Like, so, whoops. You see the first tank got hit, and it's knocked out. And we now see the second one getting ready to get hit. Ooh! And it was hit.
It got ready, and it got hit.
Hit bad.
This is the Vendetta Air. This is better than Air Koryo. This is Vendetta Air. Welcome to your airline seat. Have a seat.
Dude, I think they just got flight miles. No joke. I think they just beat Air Koryo.
Air Koryo.
And that thing be cooking like a Koryo. And with that, that's the end of the clip. But really nice to see the 110th was able to knock out 2 tanks today. Moving on from that clip and a little bit behind the lines, we also get to see some destroyed Russian equipment near Vesely, which is right near the old Donetsk airport. All right, cool. But we can see loads of destroyed vehicles. Cooked.
Whoa.
We can see even more destruction on this road. As my lungs
this could double. This could double as like one of those safari drives or something like that. When you're driving through the safari,
Yeah, like the safari, like driving through the safari, But I agree with you.
I was trying to come up with the word for it. I'm like, what is it? The Sahara? Yeah, like the Sahara or something like that. I was like, I'll just say the same thing over and that'll work.
Yeah, like the safari or something, like the safari. But moving on from that and out of the Avdiivka area and through the southern front, where we didn't get any video footage today, and down into the area of Kherson, we did get to see that near Chornyanka, a T-62M was destroyed. Isn't that sad? Weep. But moving on from that and into our next clip near to the area of Oleski, we got to hear that apparently drunk Russians are a bit of an issue. This was a translation. Now there will be swearing. Take the children away from the screens. I gotta give credit. At least they tell them to keep the children away from the screens. Again, I want to highlight the problem of booze in the Kherson direction. It is becoming more and more. This process can no longer be stopped by enthusiasts. The roof of this hall is very strong, and it is found both in civilian and law enforcement agencies. You can throw stones at me, say that it is impossible not to drink at the front, but this is not so. At the moment, a very large percentage of those killed in the direction are blue. Almost everyone drinks. I understand that you are tired, bro, but think about your people. How many times has the blue killed many people? Inaccuracy by ism. Man, he's down with the ism. Everything appears when you were drunk, which in turn leads to death. Okay, even to your own death, but when half a company dies because of one effing bruise, then it's already a shame when that bruise starts shooting, in my opinion. It's doubly offensive. I understand that not everyone shoots. If you can stop drinking, then sit in a closed room, lock yourself with 40 locks, and get so drunk that you won't even be able to leave. Yes, I can speak differently when this goes beyond the limits. When the person goes to storm Crinky, the Booze Islands, his squad is doomed to death. Almost no one can stop at 100 grams. You can tell me that I'm wrong, but there are already a lot of cases when a lot of people died due to the blue. In the Kherson region, there are no restrictions. Let's see, where the hell is that part? Wait Wait, hang on. Did you see that? It said down here, there are no restrictions on booze.
It's right in the top.
Let's see. Oh, yeah. Let's see. In the Kherson region, there are no restrictions on booze. The warriors buy hundreds of liters from the effing hucksters who pose these hundreds of liters of vodka and other heavy drinks every day. In the Kherson region, it is necessary to at least reduce the amount of imported alcohol. If we want to lose dozens of people, or even hundreds, every day fighting across the Dnieper, then for God's sakes, get drunk like I don't know who, but if we want to win this war and lose fewer people through stupidity, then be so kind as to watch importation of alcohol. I won't be surprised that soon the hucksters will come to the islands where the battles are taking place and sell booze. Don't die foolishly, comrades. I understand that the booze will not decrease, but I hope for sanity, comrades, who read from the direction. Blue at the front means evil and death, first of all. Not you, but your comrades. And that
Man,
is the...
that's what the problem's been the whole time. Is the Russians are catching the blue. It's not the fact that they're ill-trained or improperly equipped. They've been catching that blue the whole time. That's what's been doing.
Dude, this guy sat there and said, the hucksters, bro. Like, it's like, dude, a Russian on an island. He hears a speedboat. And he's like, oh, is that the reinforcements? Are they coming to replace us? And then they just see one guy on the boat, and he just lifts up a vodka, and he says, what's up, bitches? And they're like, oh! Like, dude, that's literally like the story this guy painted on the front line down there. It's just a booze cruise down there, literally. And they just cruise up and down the river getting drunk as hell. And dying in droves, apparently. But it sounds as though alcohol is a bit of an issue down here in this front. But what would I know? It's not like the Russians are known for alcoholism. They're known for the blue. But moving on from the blue.
I've never heard anybody. First of all, I've never heard anybody measure alcohol in grams before. Typically, that's a whole different thing. Something that hot dog people are more familiar with than the Russians at this point. But also, it's like, what the hell is the blue? I've never heard anybody describe alcoholism as the blue.
Let's see. Nicknames. 1 second. Nicknames for alcohol. Let's see, so, booze, liquid courage, suds, giggle juice, hooch, moonshine, cold one, oat soda, juice, hard stuff, and beer. And then street names for alcohol. All right, so what do we got here? I got to make sure that we're not missing anything here, folks, all right? Booze, juice, giggly juice, joy juice, sauce, hard stuff, moonshine, hooch, firewater, vino, brew, cold one, draft, suds, liquid beer, liquid bread, oat soda, nectar of the gods, Kool-Aid, and liquid courage. And then we also have no blue, not seeing blue. Nowhere do I see blue. Slang, blue in slang. I'm not clicking on the Urban Dictionary. Let's see here. What is let's see.
I think they mean like alcoholism or drunkards or something like that.
Apparently so. I have no idea. I mean, that's some real communist stuff to get the blue. You know what I mean? Like, you gotta be a real commie to get the blue. You know what I mean? Dude, I'm gonna go around with like a blue ink stamp and just give people the blue. I'm like, here you go. Here's a blue. You get a blue and you get a blue. I don't know what the hell that is, but you're gonna get one. And anyways, Matthew is right. Grams is usually for baggies of that good Peruvian blow. Arr, that be some fine Peruvian blow. I'll take 100 grams. You don't measure alcohol usually in grams. Usually in America, in American numbers, it's fluid ounces. And I think in hell, even in the normal metric system, it would be milliliters, not grams. I don't know what kind of alcohol they're getting. I think it's not alcohol. I think, Matthew, that might be the happy snow. But moving on from that and up into the Kyiv region. Oh, wait a minute. Go ahead. What? How? What?
I said it could be.
Could be, man. You never know. But moving up into the Kyiv region, we also got to hear that a Zircon hypersonic missile was intercepted. That is very good to hear. Not really a lot more to say about that. We already covered that a lot earlier in the video from today. But very nice to hear and wonderful to know. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on to Kyiv, because it is time for us to hear, believe it or not, it's that time of the night for us to hear the speech. Are you kidding me? He didn't make one today. Hang on, y'all. I'm about to have to start writing letters to the office of the president of Ukraine, because we got to have speeches, all right? That's just how it works. So let me see if we got one. Do we have one? We do have one. We actually do. It's just on the YouTube channel. How come the YouTube channel doesn't have the same stuff that the website has. I just don't understand. But beyond that, we do have a speech.
Дуже вам дякую.
Okay, so here is the speech from President Zelensky. Once again, we have the translator in the side corner, and he is speaking in Ukrainian, well, in English, and then having a Ukrainian translator translate it. So then we have to put on subtitles in English. And so, without further ado, here is the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky. Speech.
Дуже вам дякую. Пані та панове, сьогодні світ бачить, що справжня дипломатія – це не лише про слова, це про кроки. Кроки, які потрібно вжити, щоб виправити ситуацію. Ми почали розвивати такі кроки, і це практичне значення саміту миру. Тому формат саміту абсолютно працюючий. І я дякую вам всім за це. Дуже вам дякую. Дякую, дорогі колеги. Всі присутні. Тепер ми бачимо, що ми зробили правильний вибір. Вибір 2 безпекових та 1 гуманітарного пункту, щоб почати рухатися до відновлення повної безпеки та справедливого миру. Панель по радіаційній та ядерній безпеці, панель по продовольчій безпеці та гуманітарна панель, присвячена звільненню полонених та депортованих осіб, включно з тисячами дітей, які було викрадено Росією з окупованих територій України. Цей діалог відбувся, і очевидно, що він може мати наслідками абсолютно практичні кроки. Ми всі у світі рівно зацікавлені у забезпеченні того, що не буде небезпеки атомним станціям або іншим атомним об'єктам. Я вдячний учасникам саміту миру за повне розуміння цього і визнання потреби у відновленні повної безпеки Запорізькій атомній електростанції, яка була захоплена російськими військами і перетворена на плацдарм війни. Я би хотів також подякувати кожному лідеру та кожній країні, яка підтримує наші зусилля забезпечити свободу навігації та зберегти вільний обіг продовольства. І я хочу наголосити, що продовольча безпека ключова не лише для країн глобального півдня, але, власне, для кожної країни у світі, тому що вона визначає ціну життя, і будь-який катастрофічний зрив продовольчих ринків є прямим шляхом до хаосу. На жаль, Росія надто часто намагалася спрямувати світ цією дорогою до дестабілізації та хаосу, і тому нам всім тепер потрібно об'єднуватися, щоб гарантувати кожній сім'ї у світі, кожній людині право на їжу та захист від цінового хаосу. І третє, я особливо вдячний за це, була панель щодо звільнення людей, які зараз у російській неволі. Ми тепер говоримо про значну кількість людей, і ми повинні повернути кожного і кожну з них додому. Цивільні заручники Росії, діти, яких було викрадено з нашої землі та розкидано по території Росії, і, звісно, воїнів. Кожен день у полоні є жахливим, і ми повинні звільнити тисячі людей, у яких забрали роки їхніх життів, які під тортурами, яким брешуть, яким кажуть про те, що ніхто на них не чекає. Уявіть, якою особистою катастрофою це є для кожної такої людини, для кожної такої дитини у полоні. Ми повинні звільнити їх, всіх їх. Отже, президенте Павеле та всі учасники панелі щодо нуклеарної безпеки, дякую вам, президенте Руто та всі панелісти з продовольчої безпеки, дякую вам дуже, прем'єр-міністре Трюдо та всі учасники гуманітарної панелі щодо звільнення людей з полону. Дякую вам всім. Я сподіваюся, що ми можемо досягнути результатів так швидко, як тільки можливо. І Саме ці та інші подібні практичні кроки до відновлення безпеки та миру доведуть всім у світі, що статут ООН може бути відновлений до своєї повної ефективності. Всі принципи та цілі статуту ООН. Дякую вам дуже. Слава Україні!
Oh, hello. Hello there. But beyond that,
Oh, Mike's doing something weird. Hold on a second.
oh dang, his mic is doing something weird, folks. I just want to let y'all in on that. It's doing something weird. Matthew, is it still doing
Okay,
something
I'm
weird?
back. I'm back.
Hey, let's get it. And with that, we are moving on into the second segment of the stream, where we get to talk to all of y'all about everything y'all want to talk about. It could be about the war. It could not be about the war. It could be something entirely different. It could be whatever y'all want. But before we do, I got to thank everyone so much once again for watching tonight so far. 7.2 thousand people were here at the peak, and 40,000 people have watched this stream so far since it began. While that is a fairly high number, it's actually not as high as it has been over the past week and a half as far as the overall amount of viewers that have been here and how many people have been watching. It really feels like a return back to the old days. Well, hell, not even the old days. This is still incredibly high, to be quite honest, because usually at the peak, way back in the day, it would have been like 5.5 thousand live viewers. So even reaching 7.2 thousand is something that's pretty crazy. And we are so appreciative and so honored to have y'all all here tonight, listening to the stream, watching it, and enjoying it, because we put a lot of effort into this thing, and we hope that it really showed tonight with the kind of news that we missed, the kind of analysis that we had, or the kind of news that we covered, the kind of analysis that we had, and everything else in between. Because we try incredibly hard to make sure that the show is a well-run one. And if y'all did enjoy it, hit that like button. Subscribe, will you? It makes us happy. We like it. But Matthew, take it on away from here. What do we got?
All right. And also, by the way, it's because of Father's Day is the reason why the view count's a little bit lower than usual, because that is what it is, man. And also, by the way, I just wanted to say, make this announcement real quick. If you've ever drank some of that good stuff and caught the blue, then go ahead and do me a little favor and hit that subscribe button and hit the like button as well. A good reference to a gun channel out there that y'all are probably familiar with. But anyways, moving on from that, we do have one top donation to call out since the last time we called them out. And this one goes to Darren Maynard, who puts in a $250 donation. And huge shout out to Darren for bringing us up to $4,289 on the fundraiser. Tremendous. Getting close to 5K. I'm not sure if we'll make it to 5K, but we're getting close. And huge shout out to Darren. And with that, we're jumping into our questions once again. And we have some very good ones. And the first one is going to go to Ryan Peacock. And he says, can we get a hood review? This time, can we get a hood review of Pripyat in the Kyiv Oblast?
Dang, what a hood. Now, that is one hood. I've heard that there's real ones down in Pripyat. It's like you're in Pripyat these days, you're something else. I'm just going to say. Also, look, it's Sandy Plateau, waste storage site. Boy, it looks like there's some waste out there. Like, the ground's dead, pretty much. Also, they got a yacht club, man. You like they got a yacht club.
That's like something the rich people might do or something like that when they want to go in the water.
Dude, that's something that's just too wealthy for us to even think about, man. For real, for real. Like, I can't even think of that. Like, dude, what? You would have to be like Bill Gates to own a boat, man. Like, 100%. No way in hell. By the way, that sounded so detached to sit on something like that and then say, this is something a rich person would have. It's like, no. It's like what a lot of people have, like it's pretty much just like a motorized wheelchair, you know? It's like I was like, I don't know where he's coming from.
It's like, brother, that vehicle is probably funded using some American dollars. It's like military money. It's not like people money.
Yeah, it's like my brother in Christ. It's like this thing is defense tech. It's like, what are you talking about? Anyways, let's click on Pripyat. Can we even get a street view of Pripyat? No way!
Oh,
no way! Oh my God! Oh, gamma travel. Okay, so there are commie blocks right there. It's just that everything's so overgrown now that you can't really tell. Honestly, this place looks pretty healthy. I mean, I would live here. You know.
I might live here. You know, it looks pretty good. You know, it's not like there's like invisible bullets flying around everywhere.
Dude, invisible bullets. Dude, I know some place that's worse. East St. Louis, they got real bullets. Like, they ain't invisible. You see them. But
man, they're slinging that metal.
Man, they slinging that lead. Like, they slinging it. But I'll be honest with y'all. the Pripyat street view is kind of a little disappointing because the whole place is so overgrown at this point due to abandonment that there isn't really a lot of the city to be seen. It's really just like forest paths everywhere. And I'm trying to let me back out and let me see if I can find the square. So this place ought to be fairly visible. We ought to be able to get a good look at this because this is like the central town square. So here we go. This is what it looks like. That is the Palace of Culture, I believe, for Pripyat. And yeah, I mean, the whole place is so overgrown. Those poplar trees grow insanely fast, like an insanely tall too. Because this entire area, remember, was a populated city up till 1986. And since then, all of this has happened. I mean, the place has returned to nature. So is it a hood or more so of a nature reserve at this point? I would say it's a nature reserve. And also, what does that building say over here? Gultili Policy. Police? No, I don't think that's the police. Hotel. That's like hotel, maybe. Let me,
Hotel police.
I'm doubting that, though. Like, why in the world would there be a hotel for police? You know, like, man, I wish we knew. Wait, hang on. Maybe it has it up here. Police.
You know, Anatoly Dyatlov, I believe he lived in Pripyat, somewhere in here.
So this is the Policia Hotel. Oh, dude, look, dude. Massive gains here. I'm telling you, man, I'm taking a trip to Chernobyl. But let's see here. So there's some people walking around. Is this guy on a phone? Oh no, I think he's got like a Geiger counter. Yeah. Look, I was about to be like, oh look, it's a Banksy painting, Matthew. The world's been saved. Dude, have
Banksy
you ever
made up in the Red Forest and all that junk?
I'm guessing so. Dude, have you ever seen that meme about the Banksy paintings though?
What's the meme?
Hang on, let me go. Let me go. Get it. Banksy. Banksy meme. Oh, dude, I wish I could. I hope I can find it. I hope I can find it.
Banksy. That sounds like something the rich people might have. A little Banksy.
Yeah, that sounds like something rich folk may have. You know what I mean? But let's see. Dude, I gotta find this Banksy painting meme. Let me go see if I can find it. Cause it's dang man, I cannot find it. But it's like a Banksy painting of like a little girl with a flower or something, and it's like all of the evil guys of the world, like Putin, Kim Jong-un, and Xi Jinping. They're all looking at the painting together, like kind of crying. And then the last frame of like the meme says, "The peace, world peace has come. A shitty Banksy painting saved the world." And it's like honestly though, I mean, it's not that far off because you know, like I respect arts and everything, but adding like art can stop war, it's like that's a little far fetched. I'm not gonna lie. But anyways, let's see here. What else do we have? Oh, dude, we got ourselves a little Lenin. And what do we have? I don't even know. But anyways, we also got a sickle in. Look, an old Soviet sickle and hammer. Wonderful stuff. Wonderful news. Love the Soviet Union.
That's just crazy. This place basically got preserved in that same time period as the Chernobyl accident because they had to get out of there. It's just crazy to see. Like everything's exactly the way it was, minus that fox.
Dude, that fox, man, that thing might be a little irradiated. Like, I'm not gonna lie, that thing look a little scraggly. But let's see here. Oh, they got some nice hotel rooms. I like it. Oh, look at that. Oh, look, here's the actual inside of the buildings now. Yeah, like that's what it really would look like. And I mean, my goodness, what a place. I mean, I would really.
How did it end up destroyed like this though? Like when they left, they just evacuated. They didn't like go berserk or anything, did they?
I don't know. That's a good question. I wonder why all this looks like that. Maybe the elements, maybe wind. You know, or somebody started throwing stuff around in there. I'm doubting that, though, because it's not like they have tornadoes coming through Pripyat. You know what I mean?
They had a bit of a purge before they, headed out.
Man, the liquidators got a little rowdy. Like they were sitting there, man, like, all right, let's mess some shit up. And just start throwing tables and chairs and stuff. But let's see here. What else? Oh, look, they actually showed a picture. So that's what the area looks like now, and that's what it looked like back in the day right before the disaster. So it actually looked pretty nice, I'm not going to lie. But it's nice. And we're back. I'm so sorry, everyone, about the lag attacks. They've been happening ever since we talked about the Chinese tonight. But anyways, hang on. Oh, here we go, dude. Oh my god, I found it. I found it, Matthew. Hang on, let me go take this off screen. Let me go throw up the meme. So this is the meme right here that I'm talking about.
Let's see. Every word now because wait. Oh, oh man, they did him dirty.
Oh my lord, dude! I saw that like I think like about a year ago, and it got me a good laugh because it's like it says thanks up there on the news.
A little thanks.
A little big thanksy to Banks. It just said every war is now over because of so much. I was like, oh my god. I was like, no, that's you can't deny it.
Wait a second. That guy, there's Putin. There's the Saudi prince, I think. There's Kim Jong Un. Who the hell's the guy on the right? Who the hell's that supposed to be?
I have no clue. Like, I'm like, it could be any Western European leader from any country.
Mao Zedong.
No way that's Mao, because Mao, well, Xi and Mao both had like black hair. I don't know who that would be. But beyond that, this is a funny meme. Like, there's a big thanksy to Banksy. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. Not dissing on Banksy, but still, you know, these paintings aren't stopping wars, are they? I don't think they are. But anyways, moving on from that, there you go. Hood review. What?
Somebody misheard what I said. Mao Zedong.
Oh no, they said Mousy Dong, dude. Oh my god.
Oh no.
Oh no.
This shall not be permitted.
Oh my goodness, man. Instaban. Like, it's too much right there. Goodness gracious, dude. Like, okay, that was a pretty good one. Also, by the way, it's actually Mao Zedong. Like if we're trying to be completely accurate. But the thing is that everyone called him Mao Zedong, and so I just grew up calling him that. But still, you know, it's something. It's hilarious. I'm not gonna let that. Pretty funny. Also, Matthew, why in the world did they have a yacht club like right here, where, you know, really ritzy kind of thing, really wealthy rich people, but then they could only float around in like a bathtub-sized lake?
That's because that was the Soviet way. It was, you know, just what they did. That's what the rich people used to do.
Man, I'm guessing, man, them wealthy people, you know what I mean? Like, you had to be ultra wealthy, ultra rich, something the rich people would do. You know what I mean? Like, really rich people. Also, man, look how much the Pripyat River has shifted course over the years. Like, especially through this area. Like, all of these little, small, like, lake-looking things are where the river once, flowed, and then it changed its course to take the straightest path.
That's pretty neat. I guess it did what nature is supposed to do. It went straight.
Well, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And also, look, it's Chernobyl. Wow.
Oh.
Wow, look, there's an actual Chernobyl. Dude, everyone always said, it's actually not Chernobyl. Wait a minute, this place looks occupied nearly.
It could be occupied by the Russians.
But yeah, this is actually pretty nice, like, especially compared to Pripyat. How far away is this from the reactor? Okay, so the reactor is up there, and then Pripyat is right there. And so going off of that, is that even in the exclusion zone? So let's see here. I don't know. Might be. Also, where's the red forest? Oh, here we go.
That's where the Russians went digging.
Dig, guys, dig. It's like, but I'm feeling a little crazy. Who gives a shit? Dig. It's like, no, please. Dude, where? Oh, look. Hedgehog.
Oh, what the hell is up with this photo? It looks like something out in the back rooms or something like that. Hedgehog.
Yeah, let's see. You know something interesting? A lot of people are taking pictures of the red forest. I ain't seen a lot of red, ain't gonna lie. Like, okay, there's a little bit of it. Oh, look.
It's really red.
Conscripts. That's from 2018, by the way. So that's actually Ukrainian army guys. But still, that would have been funny if it was the Russians. Look, wild horses living in the zone. But you know, I'm kind of trying to point this out the best I can here, y'all. The red forest ain't really red anymore, is it? It's just kind of not really anything. Because, I mean, all these pictures here, I'm not seeing a lot of red. That has a filter on it. That doesn't count. But where in the hell is the red forest? Because I remember, y'all, in the HBO miniseries, it was red. And I swear, it's the yellow forest now, it seems, instead of the red forest. I'll be honest with y'all, an irradiated hellscape actually doesn't look that bad, does it, Matthew? It kind of just looks like natural forest.
Yeah, it doesn't look that bad, but I think back in the day it might have looked a little horrific. There's a little red on the map down there on that little forest. You see down there in the bottom right? Zoom back out a little bit.
Down here?
Zoom back out.
Yeah,
a little
kinda.
bit of red.
Do we have pictures around here? Yeah, we got a picture here.
Oh.
Oh. Average Russian home looked like. That's an average. Dude, Vadim came in here and he was like, holy hell, this looks like my child. It's just like, maybe it was. Like, who knows? But also, this is Skola number 1. So this is school number 1 that we're in right here. Dude, they got them statues on the wall, so that way it looks really dystopian after the fallout. Dude, I don't think these are industry grade cinder blocks right here. These are like those like Duplo. These are those freaking Duplo cinder blocks, man. They're like 5 times the size of a normal cinder block.
Man, they're out here building like the Egyptians did those pyramids.
Dude, people will be sitting there going, bro, aliens built the pyramids. Meanwhile, the Soviet Union's using a freaking industrial crane to move one cinder block into place. These are the biggest cinder blocks I have ever seen in my life. Like, oh my god, like, imagine, look, these, like, 4 cinder blocks are like 6 feet tall. Like, imagine how many cinder blocks it would take to get 6 feet high in the United States. Like, it would actually be a lot more than 4, but that is crazy. Those cinder blocks are huge. And also, that school is not where that picture was on the map, by the way. That's like force. What's out here? Vector.
Where's the reactor at?
Let's see here. Where is it at? Actually, I know where it is. Why did I say it that way? Here it is. It's right there. There's the sarcophagus for the reactors. Here's reactor 1, reactor 2, reactor 3, and then reactor 4.
Are they going to fire them back up?
Man, I heard they were getting ready to gas them up as James Hughes gasses up the fundraiser and throws in a 200. Goodness gracious. Also, Matthew, look, here's the administrative building where they raised the power.
Oh, it sure is. Click on it. Let's see the reviews.
What's the
reviews? Goddamn good reviews.
It was a lot of fun. I decided to live here because my legs wouldn't move anymore. I even saw Optimus Prime in 2011. Visited on the weekend. Why do I say visited on the weekend? But anyways, normally
what?
Visited on a weekday.
Weekday? That means they're goofing off from work going here.
Yeah, man, they took time off work to come out here. But let's see. Volodymyr Kolesnik, or Kolesnik, Kolesnik, I believe that is. Put a 5-star, and then Bliaduk threw in a 5.
Bliat Man. This is where Bliat Man was formed and like forged from the ashes of the elephant's foot, and he left a review and said, 5-star Bliat. When I handed it out, I said 5-star. Great stay.
Oh man, let's see. Okay, so here's the sarcophagus right there. That's the new one. What else? Here's the administrative room where they raise the power. Raise the power, baby. But beyond that, let's see what else.
The AZ5 button was over there on the far left, closest to the camera.
Let's see. Where would that button be? It's mixed in probably with the rest of them, but still pretty cool. Let's see here. What else do we have? We got more pictures of the reactor housings. We got this railroad bridge right here. Really cool. Like it. What else do we have? We have... Now every time we look at a painting in the zone, man, I'm thinking of that Banksy paintings. But anyways, that's not Banksy.
Somebody shaved off a good bit of their lifespan just to paint that right there next to the reactor like that.
Man, because it's the power of the atom and the horses roaming in the wilderness. Very, very poetic. But let's see here.
I don't think there's anything poetic at all about what happened at Chernobyl. I think that was just a disaster all the way around.
I'm not gonna lie, it was. Also, what the hell is this? This is in Poland. They call this Chernobyl Nuclear Power Plant Unit Number 2. No, it's not. That's the Polish flag, my boy, and that does not look like Chernobyl. But let's see here. What else do we have? We have a whole bunch of random pictures.
There's that cheap little Geiger counter that I had before that I returned. It wasn't that great, to be honest. Man, don't go into the zone relying on that. Like, yeah, goodness.
Dude, by the time this man found out he got a lethal dose, it was 3 hours later, and he was riding home in the car, and that thing finally went. He was like, "Oh no!" He was like, "Oh no!" Oh my god, dude, this is that 话手包手 I've been chilling kind of Geiger counter. This is that kind dude that sits there and says, "Cut the power, stop the spread of misinformation," and it tells you it's fine, until you get home, and like 3 days later, it eventually goes. Beep, 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 you're like, "Oh no, I'm dead." Like I'm already done.
But like in all seriousness though, it kind of worked okay. It was just a little bit slow in my opinion, but it worked okay.
Man, I'm telling you what. Let's see. Man, I'm trying to find something else interesting around the power plant to look at. Chernobyl canteen number 19. They had 19 other canteens. What do we got here? Bro, they cooking up that good food.
I mean, that looks recent.
2021.
Oh, what happened? What's going on?
What do you mean? What's happened?
Like, why are they serving up food here? I thought it was abandoned.
Bro, man, you gotta be slinging that hash out here. Like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, they actually have a still functioning canteen out here near to the reactor. I wouldn't eat food.
Whoa, that dude was giving a death stare over there on the right. Do you see that? Don't film me while I'm eating in the zone.
Do you know this shit?
Did you get my permission?
Do you know that this shit cost $13? Like that's he's like, that wasn't really fun. But let's see here. What else do we?
These guys are eating a damn feast. They got like 5 plates on their like tray. Do you see that? They're eating like a ton.
Man, they got literally like just cooked shells with no spice. Panko. It's a freaking country fried steak. They got a little piece of salami, some cucumbers. Maybe some baby vomit, some pieces of carrots, a soup, and some bread, and then also piss. You get free piss at the zone. Oh man, a great place to turn back the time to a time that was simpler, a time where radiation just killed your ass. But they have an entire menu. Here's the menu. What do we have on this menu? We got potatoes and something else. We got that smetana, which is like a salmon or something like that. And then we got that Hali Bimoni. I don't know what that is. We got bread. We got hlip. Of 2 different kinds. This is bizarre. Like, I didn't even know that there was a functioning restaurant in this place. That's whack. Like, I don't think this is even safe, like, you know, to eat there. At least I wouldn't think it is. And to work here every day, I feel like that is not safe. But nevertheless, people are eating here. And people ain't
eating damn good in here, too. Like, they're just eating fantastic.
Bro, dude, you sit there and you're like, dude, the zone is a terrible place. It shows the dangers of radiation. Meanwhile, in canteen number 19, it's like an Asian restaurant there with that giant walking. They're like flinging like 50 pounds of rice up into the air. Like, let me see here. Dudes in the back of the class meme. Hang on, let me go get that. In the back of the class meme. Hang on, dude. Let me go see if I can get it. Oh, yeah, here we go. Dude, people are like, dude, Chernobyl is a freaking hellhole. Nothing survives there. It shows the dangers of nuclear power. Meanwhile, the folks in Chernobyl canteen number 19 are like this right here.
Oh, no.
Bro, they cooking, bro. Like, they're like, man, radiation or not, these eats going to be bussin', man. But anyways.
Man, I hope they don't have like a sign on the wall in this canteen like that says like locally sourced food, eco-friendly, sustainable, like
organic
farming. Yeah, because if it comes from nearby, you're in trouble.
Man, I'm telling you what. But with that, I thank you so much for sharing this incredible hood review with us. This may not be a hood, but it is going to be an honorary hood now because this is probably one of the funnest times we had looking around the zone. But with that, I hope that does address that well, at least the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a question from Bobo who says, are there 2 glide bombs per orc plane or just 1?
Usually there's several. Actually, a single plane, depending on the type, can actually drop up to 4 of them. From what we know, I believe the ones that can drop 4 are Su-34s. I believe Su-24s can carry 2. but it depends on each aircraft. But most, if not all of them, can drop more than one at a time. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Little Bear, who says, will lasers be the next-gen drone defense?
Yes, certainly, 100%. Because you can't, like, the most economical way to destroy an enemy target is the way that will be taken forward. And right now, lasers are the cheapest way to deal with them going forward into the future. So I would say certainly lasers will be used as anti-drone defense of the future. And so I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Booyah 360 Report, who says, could Putin lob a non-strategic strategic nuke in Lithuania or Latvia, and the West probably would not respond for fear of escalation, yes?
The escalation happened by that point, so I don't think they'd be scared of escalation. War would have begun immediately. So I would say no, there's no way that would happen. There's never a world where someone is just going to fling a nuke at someone else and then nothing happens. Something will happen as a result of that. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to You're Taking My Life, who says, if the Russians were to shell the old reactors still at Chernobyl, would it be a bad nuclear incident?
Not really, because all of those reactors, I believe, have been completely deactivated at this point and are really posing no radioactive risk. The only one that kind of poses a risk is the sarcophagus, because it's constantly leaking radiation because of the massive radioactive mass sitting at the bottom of it from the meltdown. But the rest of them are pretty okay. So if they shelled any of the reactors, it would be fine, unless if they hit the sarcophagus and ruptured a hole in it, then that would be a serious issue. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a question from Adam McLean, who says, it seems like the rest of the world is ramping up drone manufacturing, but I hear nothing in the United States about our military following suit. And do you guys know something that I don't?
Yes, the United States military had largely already introduced drones of different kinds into the armed forces. I don't believe we have FPV drones or anything similar to that, or drones that actually carry some kind of ammunition. Well, actually, we do. I forgot the name of it, Matty. What is it, the Hornet or something like that?
Yeah, it's I'm not sure if it's the Hornet. It's like, damn, what is the name of that thing? It's a little small one. I'll have to look it up.
Yeah, I forgot the name of it, but we do have drones like that, and so the rest of the world's kind of catching up. But say what?
A Switchblade.
Oh, the Switchblade. Yes, of course, the Switchblade. But we have the Switchblade, and we have a wide variety of smaller drones that the U.S. Army already uses. So the answer to that question is we already have kind of hopped into that realm before this drone war really took off. But of course, we now understand that drones like that would be needed on a much larger scale. So I have a feeling that probably over the next 2 to 3 years, we'll probably see that the Army starts to lean heavily into that, along with many other branches. But for now, we are kind of already there, is the best way to explain it. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. What?
So it's a Switchblade, but we also have the FLIR Black Hornet Nano, which is like a super, like the guy in the United 24 video would say, a rich person's drone right there. Take a look at that, Enforcer. It's in the Discord DM.
What's the name of it? I'll just Google it.
It's the FLIR Black Hornet Nano.
Let me go get that drone. Oh, wow, dude, you can get these things for $124. Whoa. What the hell? You actually can. Like, I'm not even kidding. What the hell? It's a FLIR is what you called it?
Yeah, FLIR.
Look at this. Look, there it is. How's this little buddy? Wait, they have a video?
We'll see.
Dang, we got to watch this video.
Like a horror movie.
Ooh, we're coming to get you. Black Hornet 4. Launch in less than 20 seconds. What's the string hanging off the bottom of this thing in every shot?
An antenna, I think.
Zipline mode. Interesting.
That's pretty sick, I'm not gonna lie.
That is pretty cool. And you can charge 3 batteries simultaneously. Who knows what the charge is on those, but still pretty cool. One-handed controller. That's pretty cool, too. Bro, is that a Leopard 2 Bergpanzer? Like, that was actually kind of cool looking. Bro, they laying down that heat. Increase operational tempo. Now, that's a good buzzword right there. Now, wait, hang on. Why did the engineering vehicle have to, like, just scoop some dirt and then they climbed over the hill anyways?
Like, and they're doing that tactical digging.
Bro, they doing that tactical sandbox out here. They just like, excuse me, I'm having fun. Y'all go assault the enemy position. They giving them that. Okay, so my one gripe in this video is why do they keep on using this thing so low to the ground? Why not get some altitude so that way you can get some distance on the field of view? You know, like, I don't know. That's just one critique of mine because that's how they used them in Ukraine, but that's still a little interesting to me. Bro, they coming up hot. Man, the way he flicked
And they got those saws.
Man, the way he flicked that rifle down right here, though, man, that was professionalism. Look at that. Pop! Like, I was like, what the hell? Like, what was up with that? Anyways, bro, he putting down the heat. So it's not that fast. It moves 33 feet a second.
And that's kind of slow, isn't it?
That is pretty slow. Like, let's see, 33 feet a second. Yeah, I mean, that's not that quick. I would just
Actually,
like,
that's pretty damn fast, actually. I take that back. 33 feet a second?
So, well, actually, yeah, that is kind of fast. Whoops, sorry, bad at math. But anyways. They got a thermal camera up in this thing.
Why don't they show it, like, going at, like, fast speed or something?
I don't know. Good question. Oh, a CV9030. That's nice.
Man, they're launching this thing everywhere. It's like it's the only thing they got.
Dude, it's like a whole ass APC rolls up. Guess what? Black Hornet. It's like, okay, no. It's like,
this whole fictional army is based around this one like little piece of toy tech right here.
Dude, you know what this video feels like? It feels like one of those Fisher Price toy commercials where they're like, you can do anything with Nerf, and like every single clip it's like them using a Nerf gun. Like nothing else in the ad. Everything's a Nerf gun. Bro, watch him. He's about to whip that thing out again. Like, hey, look. See without being seen. Although that CV9030 really did just drive up on them on that video. Like, I think you were seen, but they getting out again. Collision. Now that is nice. Collision avoidance. That is pretty cool. Bro, he's about to whip out that drone. Oh! It called it. Okay, that was a cool shot. That was actually pretty neat.
They're whipping it out again.
Dude, they're about to show someone like going to the toilet. Like they're about like, man, I need to go to the restroom. You're gonna hear that. They're gonna be like just trying to see if anyone's already at the porta potty or something in a second. But let's see here.
Now, I know that this thing right here has got to be pricey. Like, it's probably cheaper, I would assume, to buy like a normal like consumer drone like the Ukrainians are doing and just use that. And it has almost equivalent capabilities. I know this thing's a little smaller. It can go through windows and stuff probably pretty easy. But, you know, is it really an advantage? Like, no, man. That's a junker right there. That's not the real deal. That's fake.
Let's see. A Black Hornet drone price. That's like the big... Dang!
Oh my God, 200,000! You're joking.
No, dude, like that's a little too expensive, isn't it? Like, you know,
that's why I tell you, man, about the military procurement and stuff like that. Like the stuff that we're buying is crazy expensive. Like that drone right there. You can get a DJI equivalent of that drone for like a couple thousand.
Hold up. Read this, though. Although the Army was seeking a mini drone for use by individual squads through the Soldier-Borne Sensors program, the individually handmade Black Hornet was seen as too expensive for large-scale deployment, with a unit costing as much as $195,000. So as we can see, the military does have common sense and went, that's too expensive for one small drone, and also they're handmade. Like, they're not even made on like they're not even made on an industrial level. So if any of these things were lost, you got to wait for the artisans to make another one. It's like I don't like the idea of that. Like, war in the modern world is industrial. Everything has to be made on a factory level, on an industrial scale. So having handmade drones, that's not good.
Man, that is just crazy. Like $200,000. Like, I was about to say, like, if the Army is buying that, that is freaking nuts to do that. It's like, that's worse than like the $5,000 hammer.
I mean, this is insane. Let's see. Was in use by militaries of 19 NATO allied countries. Lee County Sheriff's Office also deploys this as well, just in case you all were curious.
What?
There is a sheriff's office that apparently has some of these, which...
That's ours, isn't it?
Wait a minute, hang on. I think Lee County isn't. Oh, man, wait a minute. Oh, it is! It is!
Oh, my God.
Dude, wait, hang on. Let me make sure. Oh, my God.
Oh.
So why? Why do they have... So Lee County is Auburn and Opelika. And if I'm reading this correctly... Hang on. Let's go to the source. Oh, it's Florida. Lee County, Florida. Okay, it's for the Florida man. That makes sense. Like, that kind of... You have to have that kind of surveillance for Florida, man. I was about to Lee County in Alabama.
What the hell is the sheriff's department doing spending $200,000 on a little toy drone?
I mean, dude, you think that's crazy. The county that Clanton is in, let me go to their police station here. Where's their police station? There's the county jail. I gotta find this, though, dude, because they actually have, down here in this county, a little bird for the police department. Like, well, actually for the sheriffs, but they have an actual AH-6 little bird.
Oh, yeah, I've seen it before when I was driving through Clanton. I've seen them. They were going over like a field looking for like an escaped prisoner with it or something. And they were like swinging it around like maniacs.
Oh, yeah, now I remember that. Yeah. You told me about that. But yeah, they have it around here somewhere. It's just that I can't find it right now. But yeah, I was like, that's a little wasteful, isn't it? Like, to have a whole little bird? Like, it's like, couldn't you have gotten something else? But anyways, with that, I hope we addressed that well, because that was a fun rabbit hole in its own right. But we already have drones, for the most part, that have been integrated into the armed forces. Really the whole roundabout answer. But with that, I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the third to last question of the night.
And this one goes to LSA Master Sergeant Figment, and he said, how involved do you think China is in regards to the strike on a Ukrainian-owned trade ship?
Probably not that involved. It's most likely an Iranian deal on their own, and the Houthis are just striking at anything that's passing, and now a Ukrainian ship ended up getting the short end of the stick, because a while ago, actually, some Russian ships ended up getting hit by the Houthis as well, but of course, considering the diplomatic relations between Iran and Russia, nothing was really done about that. But the Houthis are a bit of a wild card down there. They will fire at anything that's passing through the area, so it doesn't really have a lot to do with Chinese involvement or Russian involvement. It's just that the Houthis are absolutely insane and will shoot at anything. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to AF Kaplan, who says, in light of the Russian banks collapsing, how can Russia hope to collect higher taxes if their people can't access even their own monies?
They'll find a way. Like, they will find a way. But that is a good question, and it really is showing how everything is compounding at one point to create the perfect economic storm for everything really to collapse at this point. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion, because you got a good point. There really is no way for them to collect that money, but they'll try nevertheless, and they'll probably put the Russian Federation into an even worse situation when they do. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person to throw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is Roger H. And Roger says, does Zelensky not see China's threat to invade Taiwan? And isn't that the same as Russia's invasion of Ukraine? And why wouldn't he take this into consideration?
Well, that kind of gets in the way. Huh, you know, that's a good question, actually. Matthew, you saved the best for last there, didn't you?
That was a good point. I told him it was a good one earlier.
Yeah,
I was
that was
like, you know, it's like China is doing the same thing that Russia's doing in a different way. They haven't pulled the trigger yet, but they're going to do it eventually.
You know, Matthew, that's actually really interesting. And that kind of does sail in the wind, sail against the wind of a lot of people saying that Zelensky's a really smart guy. Because if Zelensky said nations have a sovereign right to their existence, why in the world does that apply to Ukraine, but that wouldn't apply to Taiwan? And why in the world would Ukraine become friends with a country that is just like Russia in that respect? That is actually a really good question. And that is one that I just don't think I could answer. I think, to be quite honest, if I answer that question, people might be a little bit unhappy with the answer. And so, you know, I'm really debating whether I should answer that honestly or not. Because really, well, I'm debating whether I should answer it or not, really. Because the thing is that, to put it frankly, Ukraine doesn't really care about Taiwan. And that's just really the case. Ukraine really doesn't care about other injustices happening around the world, to be quite honest, because it's like he's saying, we want to be friends with the Chinese. But it's like, aren't the Chinese already conducting a cultural and physical genocide of their own right now in a certain part of their country, right at this very moment, that we can't even talk about on YouTube because it's so well publicly known, but nevertheless, the Chinese government makes it very clear they don't want a lot of info to be talked about that online. Isn't it the Chinese that end up subjugating their people to the exact same kind of oppressive laws that the Russian Federation does to their own citizens? Isn't it the Chinese that openly deny the sovereignty of the Japanese islands within the East China Sea, Vietnamese islands within the South China Sea, Filipino fishing waters and territorial waters, and at the same time the sovereignty of Taiwan? Yet at the same time they want to be friends with these people. I mean, to me they sound like Russia on an even worse scale, a much more disruptive Russia with actual power behind what they do. But nevertheless, Zelensky wants to say that there's a possibility for friendship with a country like that. And to be entirely honest with y'all, I can see Matthew being like, good night, everyone. I'm going to be entirely honest with y'all here. That is why when I'm seeing people in the chat right now saying Zelensky is smarter than that, I'm kind of a little bit inclined to disagree, to be quite honest. Because if he's willing to overlook all of that about the Chinese, is he really going to be smart enough to see the hook that's attached to that bait that the Chinese are going to throw out to him here in a bit, considering he wants to say that he's open to being friends with them? Will he really? I mean, and I'm not saying that the guy is stupid, you know, because he has made some incredibly amazing decisions so far over the course of the entire war, and, you know, that can't be denied. But the way Zelensky has made it very clear that he doesn't really have any qualms with the Chinese whatsoever, and in fact, he's open to having an actual Chinese-Ukrainian relationship, it does throw in some questions to me about what kind of logic is this working off of, and that's something that I'm really having a hard time justifying in my head. And when you put out all of this about the Chinese, and when people say, oh, there's no problem with being friends with the Chinese, there is a lot of problems with being friends with the Chinese, not just on a sphere of influence level, but on just a moralistic level. I mean, the Chinese are they are one of the most questionable powers. They are the most questionable power of a major scale in the modern world, and it's just something that I'm not really seeing why in the world Zelensky would want to move towards their direction. And I feel like, to be quite honest, it is the United States' responsibility, considering that we kind of float the entire war in Ukraine along with Europe, to tell the Ukrainians that they ought to abandon those ideas of being friends with the Chinese, because if they want to be friends with the Chinese, do they want to be friends with us? And are they going to try and ditch us once the war ends? Those are things that we have to, you know, of course, consider. You know, who knows? And also, I see Clement Fong saying, if it's to knock the China-Russo relations out of whack, it makes sense. But does it really? Because how in the world is he really knocking him out of whack? And Ukraine is not in a position to leverage anything against the Chinese. The Chinese are in all the position to leverage everything against Ukraine in that kind of a relationship. China is more powerful economically, militarily. They could leave Ukraine out to dry if they want to. It won't matter to the Chinese. But on the Ukrainian end, they really do want support from anyone and everyone anywhere, and they would have a pretty good reason to want that right now. And so you have to consider, out of the two, who would be more desperate to be friends with the other, and that will dictate who in the world ends up gaining the leverage or the bigger end of the stick in this relationship, and it will be the Chinese. And that's why I believe it's very important for the Western world to understand the dangers that a Ukrainian-Chinese relationship poses to all of the efforts that we have made in Ukraine, and to make sure to steer the Ukrainian government away from even looking at such a venture or such a relationship on in the future. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And also, I see Paul Throssell, one thing before we go. He said, Zelensky only cares about Ukraine surviving, as would the United States if we were in the same position. And that's true. But we on this channel, many of us are not Ukrainians. Really, all of us are not Ukrainians. There's a very small number of Ukrainians that watch every night. All of us are Westerners, and we live in the Western sphere. We're not talking on a position right now if we were Ukrainians. We are Westerners, and we're looking out for what our interests are at the end of the day. And if I'm to try and become the president of the United States by 2040, it's not only the interest of the United States that I have to consider as a top priority, it's also the interests of the entire Western sphere that have to be weighed into the equation. And that's why when looking at the Ukrainian situation, I can't just sit there and sign away what I would say are foolish decisions as far as Western Ukrainian relations to, oh, he's just trying to do what's best for Ukraine. I have to consider that we are the ones who have been bankrolling this entire war so far, the United States and Europe combined, and what would be best in our interests going forward, as far as Ukraine is concerned. And that's something that, as far as the Ukrainian-Chinese relations go, is a very bad route. Not just for Ukraine in the long run, but for the West in the long run as well. But with that, I hope that does address that well. And I got to say that was a very good question. And that really does bring up a lot of things that people have not considered in the past when talking about something like that. But with that, on that bombshell, it is time for us to end tonight's stream. I've got to thank all of y'all so much once again for watching, the 47,000 people who have watched this stream from beginning to end, and the $4,514 that was raised for Nova Ukraine. We are absolutely appreciative of each and every single one of y'all being here and enjoying this channel, and of course helping out that fundraiser. It is an amazing fundraiser, and of course helps this channel to keep on making sure that we can be on the top as far as the fundraisers go. And so with that, thank you all so much once again for watching, and we will see you all on Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 48 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die.
And with that, good night, folks. And once again, thank you for another great stream tonight. And also, happy Father's Day to everybody out there as well, because that was today, and it's almost over in about 30 minutes or so. But with that, we'll see you all on Tuesday night. And once again, Slava Ukraine, Herom Slava, and get some rest, and good night.
Yes. The Lee Spring Army sends its regards.